Hello, friends. Welcome to the Talent Management and Workforce Strategy Summit Day 3. Happy Friday Eve, Friday Junior. If you nurture it, it will become a Friday. Let us know where you're dialing in from across the world. Hacking HR is such an awesome global crowdsourced platform and outlet for all of us. I'm a people and culture executive with 2 decades of cross-industry experience in data-driven designs, inclusive initiatives, talent, and organizational development. I'm Dr. Frankie G, Dr. Frank Gonzalez, but you can just call me Frank. I have the honor of serving as your moderator today. The last 2 days have been amazing. Let's finish strong. So if you're coming back, welcome back. Hopefully you're inviting a friend. And if you're just joining us, you are in for a treat. Let's start to bring up our panelists for today as we dive into using people analytics to optimize workforce planning. Don't forget to stay tuned after this panel for agile talent models for hybrid and remote teams. Very, very relevant as we talk about return to office and things. As we do this though too, please, thank you Hacking HR for all that we do here these last few years. Thank you to our panelists. Show them some love. Get very interactive in the chat. Put out a bunch of emojis, reactions, questions, comments. I will do my best to curate that as we have some time. These times and experiences go by so quickly many times. But last but not least, I want to thank you all. Yes, you all right there, panelists, our participants, for taking this time for yourself during all the busy things that we have going on in our personal and professional life. It's always a difficult challenge, but very rewarding to pause and take time for your own, and you are in for a treat on the insights. So without further ado, we are going to start. I'm going to kind of go clockwise here with on my screen. Yep, we got you, Dr. P. You're going to be going first. I'd like for you to, if you can, we'll go around. I have my pen, by the way. I'm old school. I love to get all the senses, the sensory involved. I got my pen. I've got my notepad. I got to make sure I do my job and moderate and not get memorized by all you all's words and insights. But I'd like for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, why you said yes to this subject, and perhaps already kick us off a little bit in any route that you like. I'll give you some options. One can be going from this gut feeling to grounding of truth, right? How do we really turn data into insights? Or how do we use these insights to remove or reduce challenges rather than reinforcing them sometimes? I think sometimes data can be misused because it can tell a story, and those stories can go favorable or unfavorable, right? Just keeping it real. So, Dr. P, kick us off, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here, and especially to be on a panel that you are moderating, Frank. You are amazing. So I'm Dr. P. I work as a director of organizational culture and belonging for a company called Ithaca out of New York City. And I'm also the president and CEO of OD Synergistics Consulting LLC, where the OD stands for Organizational Development, which is a part-time management consulting firm. And myself, I've worked in HR on and off for most of my career, about over 20 years. And I enjoy helping others navigate through the elements of HR. I'm also a veteran of the US Navy and Army with 15 years of service in between the two. So happy early Veterans Day to those who have served, and thank you for your service. And a fun fact about me, I have 4 amazing adult children from ages 25 to 34. I know I only look 25 myself. Thank you. It's all right. And I have 5 grandchildren, one currently on the way as we speak now, and then number 7 arriving in April of next year. I will tell you that I'm neurodivergent, so you may see me stare into my screen or look away or, move my hands a lot. It's okay. I am present and I am engaged. I want to start by saying, for me, the shift happened for me as far as intuition during a workforce planning cycle years ago. We were planning for growth and making decisions mostly based on intuition. We do that, right? What felt right in terms of talent readiness and capacity. But when we finally dug into the data, things like internal mobility rates, skill gaps, and turnover trends, it completely reframed the conversation. The data showed that our biggest challenge wasn't hiring speed, which that's what we thought it was. It was that we weren't retaining the people that we had already invested in. And that insight changed everything. It actually helped us redirect resources toward things like leadership development, engagement, and clearer career paths instead of just more recruiting. And that was the moment that I stopped seeing data as like a report card and started viewing it as a strategic partner. It doesn't replace intuition. Let's be clear about that. It actually enhances it. And data helps us tell the story behind the numbers, make those smarter decisions faster. In my company, we have 5 core values, and speed is one. So we will say hashtag speed. And also build that credibility with our executives and our employees. Now, I always say intuition gives you the hypotheses, but data gives you the evidence. And when those two work together, that's when HR moves from being reactive to truly strategic. So in short, intuition sparks curiosity, data delivers clarity, and together they create intelligent, evidence-based leadership.
Oh my gosh, my hand is hurting as I'm like taking notes. I'm like, yes, 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 my friend, Dr. P. Oh my God, can we put some t-shirts on this? Hacking HR. You got a budget for this? I mean, we're talking about doesn't eliminate intuition, but enhances it. The hypothesis, okay. But I love how you added the human part of it, where you talked about, you looked at those insights, and we talked about hiring, but really it was development. And I think many of us, including our panelists, but even our participants, why we're here, right? There's pay, there's perks, there's purpose. all of that. A lot of times we're looking for growth. We fall into jobs intentionally, unintentionally, accident, by word of mouth, right? Things like that. But once we're there, we want growth opportunities, and data can also do that and guide us. And from an organizational standpoint, can definitely set us up for either success or failure, which we're finding a lot of organizations right now, right? They're an influx. Oh, yes, we've been developing our people. Yes, you have things going on, but are those experiences setting your people up for success and your organization up for success? So thank you so much, my friend, for sharing with us. Kosiba, my friend, share with us.
All right, thank you so much for being here with us. It's first time being on the Hacking HR panel, but I'm so excited. Never, like Dr. Frank has said, but I'm excited to be here. So I'm just going to share with you. My name is Kodziba Sibena. I'm from Botswana. And I'm an HR professional, over 10 years experience in the executive management or senior executive in the HR industry. I'm currently working in a hospital called Tidilera Private Hospital. This is the #1 private hospital in the country. And I'm leading the HR department with over 500 staff. So one of my key roles is translating data into impact, because for years, HR has been involved in administrative work. We've been involved in issuing pay slips and doing disciplinary hearings, and we're at a point where now we turn data into impact so that we can sit at the business tables where we become the business partners. So, this subject really matters to me because data has become the language of HR. It's the language of influence in HR. And for too long, we are coming from the traditional way of analyzing things within the business. It was driven by tradition, it was driven by instincts. But now we are going into the ability to read and interpret data, which is something that determines how effectively we can shape strategy and sit at the business table. So now, coming from the healthcare sector or environment, I have seen how evidence saves lives, because I'm in the hospital, so we use evidence to save lives. And I believe the same applies to any other organization. Where HR uses data well, it doesn't just optimize numbers, it improves people's experiences, careers, and well-being. That's why the topic reflects and resonates well with me. And if you've seen some of my profile, you'll notice that I write books. So having written 6 books, I'm able to take the data that I see or I gather around and turn it into the knowledge that I share with people to improve their lives. Hence why I believe that this is about turning insight into impact. Thank you so much, Dr. Frank.
Whoa. Okay. I gotta slow down because we're just getting started, and then time's gonna go by. There were so many things you said there, but 500 people. Wow. Congratulations. And thank you for being here. Wow, that's a lot of staff. But you saving lives. My gosh. I don't know, panelists, what do y'all think? I'm looking at the chat and I see a lot of affirmation on there too. But yeah, data. We talk a lot about resources and things like that, but you're literally saving lives and improving experiences, right? In any industry. I'm at a loss right now. So I'll just say that. And yes, thank you for being here. So I think we need to put that on a t-shirt too. I save lives, #data insights. I love that. So Venda, my friend, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Frank. It is a pleasure to be here among these great panelists. And I would be happy to share about how my journey has been. So I am based out majorly in India, but between Houston and India. So our company name is Argod, and it's an e-commerce company. We have 500 plus people that are there. And I lead as Chief People Officer on this organization. I also take care of corporate communications. So that's how the journey has been. In terms of the background, I have been into sales, business development, and then eventually getting into recruiting, consulting, and then eventually pouring out myself into complete human resources domain. So out of my sales experience, wherein it's all about numbers, 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 this number has to be done, has to be done. So that kind of helped me out. I'll tell you a story. It's more than about human resources, but it's about life facts. So long back, I was talking to somebody else, and out of all of a sudden, we just ended up thinking about this. If a human lives 60 years of average age, how many weeks there are? We eventually calculated, and it was 3,131 weeks. And then we were like, okay, these are calculated weeks that we have, 3,131 weeks, that's all. Out of that, 20 years just goes in our schooling, studying, and all that. And then after that, our sleeping, which is 33% of the time, 8 hours you sleep a day. So 33% is gone there. Boom, gone. So, when we started doing all these numbers, and then the people on an average, how much time it takes you to commute to your office, different part of the world, there's different, but average we took, and then time you spend with family, and then eventually how much time is there for you to spend at company, at work, at career. And then if then the company or workforce becomes so much part and responsibility of the company as well, that these people are giving this much part of the life which will never they will never get back. And it's very crucial for any company to think about it, that how they can make them succeed in the amount of time that they have got and they're dedicating to the company. So for me, what I understood early, fortunately, that numbers is more than about business. It goes beyond, which tells the stories about performance, which should not only be telling that, okay, how many people are going to leave you. It's about how many people are there who can lead your organization in future, right? And how many people are in pipeline to become in that leadership position, and lead your company or with different business verticals. For example, so we all have to go through sometimes tough decisions, tough calls, and right sizing was one of the things. We had to run the data more than instincts, right? That, okay, I feel this department has to be cut off by this percentage and all that. Of course, there was resistance from the operations or the sales team, and more than sales team, operations team, that, hey, we can't do it, we need. But then when I had to work with the leaders and chalk it out the entire plan, that, okay, the business continuity just goes on. At the same time, the number of people, for whatsoever reason we have to take a chance with, it's a hard call. Then we said, fair enough, let's train them, let's put them on the sales side, and we'd be happy. They will get some more time if they want to look out for, and we would be happy. I mean, I went up to get the resume and circulating it across my circles, that, hey, if you have anything, please help them out and all that. But then when you see some of these people who we gave chance in our different functions, and they blossoming over there, and they are giving that returns on the investment eventually for the company, you feel so good about it, that, hey, you know what, out of all these projections that we did, that instead of just letting somebody go, let's give them try on here, because there's possibility for the business growth as well as their career growth. And that eventually working out, it feels like blessing, that, okay, it worked out. And that's where some of these examples came out to be like eye-opening insights, and it helped us big time. And it goes just like beyond just numbers and business, people's story. That's what I would say. Thanks.
Woo! Okay, we're just no pressure, Charmaine. I know we're building up right here, right? No pressure, no pressure. You said a lot there, my friend. Life, and you talked about time. Time absolutely is a currency, I'll call it, that we don't get back. But I love how you talked about some of those insights are actually just fun and exciting, and actually bring the people in, and can be a way to talk with 360 to executive leadership, management, ownership, peers, middle, directs, the entire organization of, look, this is a way to also, let's now go from, hey, by the way, you only live about 3,000 weeks, you're spending X amount of time here, you're X amount of time here, let's optimize this, and almost can push towards, you know, better decisions in that kind of fun way, the data, right? But I love how you talked about life. I want to take a quick moment and give a shout out to quite a few people we have all around the world: Dubai, Denver, Southern California, New York, Philly, Chicago, around the US. But we have Nigeria, I see you. Okay. And then back to the States, we have Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, definitely. And hello from Greece. Okay, going back and forth. I see you all. A lot of energy in the room. So thank you all. We have a global panel. We have a global audience as well. Manisha, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi. Well, I think a lot of beautiful things have been said. So it's already, I think, a good use of our 17 minutes together. I am Manisha Gupta. I'm the Vice President of People Intelligence Products in Oracle. Not technically in the HR department, but all my friends are from HR organizations, right? So my story is I started as an engineer, moved towards business and products, and changed quite a few roles, like I think Shivendra did. So I've been in sales, I've been in business development, I've led engineering teams, product management teams, I've led my own company as well. But no matter which organization and what my role would be, eventually we all lean on people to get things done. Right. So this is a story around 2011. I was at LinkedIn. We were growing very rapidly. My role required me to travel quite a bit, and my teams were in, I think, 12 different countries. So there's a lot of travel going on. And there was a point when I called my HRBP and said, "Well, I have the financial insights from my FP&A. I obviously was getting all the operational reports from all my other teams, and I'm a kind of a people-centric person. So I was feeling a losing connection with some of my team members. So I said, well, how can I get a little better perspective without couldn't do one-on-ones with everybody as I was on the road like literally for the last 1 year. Like how do I get a better pulse on my people? And my HRBP friend looks back, and this was 2011, and he says, Ms. Technologist, what have you done to help solve that problem so far? And it was a joke, but it kind of stuck with me that we are trying to solve all sorts of problems in the business, from financials to, supply chain to sales to marketing. But at that point, we hadn't started looking. This is 2011 again. We hadn't really started looking meaningfully, I would say, in understanding the teams whom we all lean on to really do everything. So I wrote down a equation on a whatever, like a tissue paper on coffee, and it said, well, people make profits, end of the day, right? So if we have happier people, they will make effective teams and they will lead to profitability. The only challenge is transparency is missing. I'll also take a psychological perspective. People are human. Human beings are God made. It's very complicated to understand things that God has made. Financials is a human made thing, right? So Excel's numbers, sales, these are all human made applications, human made ways of thinking, human made functions. So obviously we had to be much better at analyzing how sales is happening and how financials are flowing. But when it comes to helping us understand each other, six of us in this hour may be exactly similar or thinking similar, but we are very different pieces, different species, right? So making a human being happier needed a lot of insights, not just what the HRIS system holds today, but also two data scientists will not be happy in the same exact team. Right. So there are personality aspects. There is my vision, my goal, my dreams, my experiences, my past lives, whatever my mother has gone through and my father has gone through and my kids are gone through, everything starts impacting me. And if my manager and I have a really good relationship, we will fit me in the right bucket for me to deliver the highest I can, for me to stay happy. And when I'm happy, I will be happily engaged. When I'm happily engaged, I would want to learn, grow, deliver a lot. In the process, if everyone is very happily engaged and thriving, teams will be much effective. When all the teams are effective and the managers are thinking the same way, guess what? Profitability will soar, right? So the equation holds true. The transparency needs to be brought in the aspect of people to fit this equation, because a lot is happening at the board level. If you see, there will be a 82 slider DAG and 3 slides will be around attrition and compensation. everything else is financials, right? So we need to, I think, change that game a little bit. But the only thing we can do is by speaking a language that everybody else is very proficient at, which is a numbers language, an analytical language. And I had that background. I do inherently believe that what you cannot measure, you will never be able to fix. So the journey started with like trying to understand, trying to measure, went and did my MBA from Wharton to really understand this depth. Like I was fully committed. 2 years strategic management, like what does it really mean to understand influence, understand how we work together. Marketing financials, yeah, they'll fall in place, that's fine. But this is, I think, the most complicated. Plus, it also has to be done ethically, much more responsibly. You cannot be just very capitalistic about it, right? So there's a social aspect of driving profitability in a manner that human beings are happier, they are thriving. We want to live a world where our kids are much more happier, doing the work they love to do, while also creating a sustainable livelihood where financials do matter. So, long story short, a lot of these things came together, and today I'm leading these product suites which are being used by companies globally. But I will say, like, I mean, there's a philosophical, I think, and a psychological aspect of understanding this problem very deeply, and then applying technology and analytics and data to solve. So the crux is asking the right questions, right? Like there is just taking it a little deeper in the AI world, which is kind of right now agents are taking over, and some jobs are getting, I would say, removed. So there's a lot of angst also. The way I look at the world is you have to be really cautious in the kind of questions we are asking, and how AI, data, technology can actually help us move in the higher kind of trance of thinking, like Maslow's law of hierarchy of needs. So the basics can be done with data analytics if done well with the right questions, and humans can then start moving to a higher level of like thinking activities, which we love doing, by the way, like philosophical activities, connecting with each other, not needing to do the data cleanup anymore, not needing to just build dashboards, but using the dashboard built by technology to answer and then the next set of digital questions. And I really think it's 20 years in, but I think this is going to be the next I don't know, 200 years, a few generations for us to really grasp this concept of using data and insights to make people happier, and have flourishing businesses. Hopefully that helps.
Absolutely, my friend. Lots of notes there too. I love the perspective about being God made versus the financial being human made, and the commonality in language that we have to be around, the value around that, the purposeful, the meaningfulness, etc. Right? So many things that can be said with that. So thank you and welcome. Last but not least, Charmaine, tell us a little bit about yourself, why you said yes, and a little bit of your insights.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Charmaine. I am the founder and CEO of Chapter 2, which is a data-backed people first coaching and consulting practice. And we are all about optimization. So organizations, leaders, employees, all about optimization. And so many thoughts as I listen to everyone. So everyone, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and everyone who's joining right now. Hello. So when I thought about this question, I really had to question myself to say, was there a time? And I'm sure there's plenty of times, right? But the big thing for me is that I've always looked at things through a systems lens, right? That's one of the things I realized about my brain now, as you know, as time goes on, and looking for what that connection between cause and effect is, right? Not wanting to guess, because I like facts. I think feelings are important, but I like facts. And earlier in my career, what I think about versus then versus now is that I use data to track what was happening, right? And over time, I began using it to understand why it was happening, right? And that's really when we think about data and how to leverage data, and that shift when we start to look at it through this, optimization, through this analytics lens, this workforce planning lens, that why is the key, right? Not just what, why. And there's one thing that I'm remembering right now is I remember working with a high performing team, and they started suddenly missing deadlines. And when we really dug into it, because leaders assumed it was maybe a workload or accountability issue, at the root of it, when we mapped the project timelines, when we looked at the data, when we looked at reporting lines, the real issue was structural. right? It wasn't that people weren't performing. It wasn't that people weren't getting things done. It was that the work was getting stuck in decision loops, just circular, right? Because the team's span of control had grown and no one thought to redesign it. And that was causing a lot of issues. So when we think about data, that's the lens that I think of it through, and something that really made me shift from to what, the why. And the goal of data, right, when we think about it, it's not just to have numbers, right? And that includes workforce planning and the topic we're talking about today. The goal isn't to collect data for the sake of it, right? We can just get numbers. I always say that, if it doesn't matter if you measure something and you don't understand what the metrics are or what you're trying to understand, right? Because then it's just measuring for measuring's sake, right? We want to help people, organizations, leaders, employees be able to make faster, better decisions, right? And make more informed workforce decisions. So when we think about it, it's really around that bridge between who we have and what the business needs next. At Chapter 2, we talk a lot about leveling up your language, right? So we say level up your language, level up your leverage, and people analytics is how you do that, right? Turning that insight into evidence and evidence into action, right? That's really key. Why this topic sits at the intersection of everything that I love, right? Performance, truth, people. And throughout my career, that's honestly been the way that I've had to center everything, right? What's happening? What do people think it's happening? And then get to the root of why it's happening. That's the only way that we solve that. And people analytics is one of the few tools that, when used correctly, can actually help you understand that.
Oh my gosh, a lot there. And Charmaine, we're gonna stay with you, and I want to double click on quintuple click on a couple of things that you said, but also that's brought up in the audience, and it's a good segue into a little bit deeper. It's going from descriptive to more predictive insights, right? Both for peers, leaders. And you mentioned a lot about that feedback loop, right? The feedback or indecisiveness. And sometimes the data actually surfaces that indecisiveness as the culture of the organization that you didn't know about, right? And Michael Roberto, the Why Great Leaders Don't Take Yes for an Answer, basically puts it in 3 categories: no, yes, maybe. A lot of maybes are people that love data, but they still don't make a decision. Give me another deck, give me more insights, give me this, but they're very indecisive still. Insecurity, or the business is doing great, so we don't want to change anything. Culture of no is just, I don't understand it, or I don't want it, I don't see the value. And a culture of yes, kind of a false consensus, and going from step 1 to the final stage and missing a lot of critical things in between. I want to call out, because that's actually something that's brought up in the chat about the approach to that. What should we be looking for? Kind of your insights around that, and we'll kind of go counterclockwise this. So I'd like to stay with you, Charmaine.
Sure. So when we think about the predictive analytic piece, I think the bigger thing that we always need to question is why, right? Because it's never about the technology. It's not tech. People blame technology for a lot. It's people, right? It's tech does what you tell it to do, right? So you have to be clear about what the actual question is. What are you trying to solve for, right? Because descriptive data tells you what happened. Predictive answers what might happen next, right? And what would you like to do to change it if you're not okay with what that outcome might be, right? It's about helping you understand the next. And descriptive is about helping you understand the now, or the previous, right? So when we link HR data with business data, right? When we revenue, pipelines, client demands, all those good things, workforce planning isn't an HR exercise, right? It's a business forecast. If we can think of it that way, right? That there's more connected data, the earlier you can act on it. So I really believe that this is about business forecasting, because workforce planning is that, optimization is around that. And how do we think about understanding the descriptive versus the predictive, and then what do we want to do with it? But again, it all goes back to what are we trying to solve for? What's the real question that we're posing, that we're trying to answer right now? Otherwise, you get stuck in those loops, right? And you talked just now about the indecision piece, and the example I used. And there's a quote by Marcus, I think it's named Tullius Cicero or something like that, and he said, "More is lost by indecision than wrong decision." And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck.
Thank you, my friend. A lot of questions coming in, a lot of affirmations and curiosities, and I highly encourage our participants, take a moment, look up our panelists, connect with them via LinkedIn. The experience doesn't stop here, it continues post. So please connect, and I'm sure that our panelists here would love to continue those and sharing those insights and growing together. Manisha.
Thank you. By the way, Dr. Frank, you definitely are one of the good facilitators I've met. Like just keeping an eye on both ends, it's good, and grasping what they're trying to say and converting them into questions. I've been like, wow, he's good. First time with you here. Okay, I'm going to take the conversation a little bit to first principles of life. I think hacking HR, your reach is pretty high. So just like connecting some basics of life with what technology and data is doing, and then we'll come back, I promise, to this optimized workforce planning. So, imagine each of us as founders or beginning of times, a company is formed. The company is normally formed to deliver some outcome, right? So, business outcomes. There's normally some financial constraints. I don't know, 500,000, 1 million, whatever, and I'm expecting to make 10 million, right? So, there's always some outcomes I want to deliver. There's some money at play. And then the moment the founder cannot do anything, he or she starts hiring. So the people, right? So it's really every business in the world is a triangle of these three nodes: people strategy, business outcomes, financials, right? Workforce planning in the end needs to be at the center of all this, where I am trying to make sure, if I'm the founder of this company or the leader of this organization or a sub team department, do I have the right people in the right seats? Obviously, with the right mindsets and the right skill sets and all that absolutely is required. But do I have the right seats to deliver the right outcomes under the given financial constraints? That's about it. I think a challenge has been created in the industry because of lack of connected data, like Charmin talked about, lack of transparency, lack of alignment, which eventually breeds lack of trust, which I think leads to indecisiveness. So the more we can bring this data together and say, okay, your outcome is A, by the way, you have dependency on team B, whose outcome is this, you're hiring somebody here. I mean, sometimes even things like you have more budget than you need and your peer has less budget than they need. And so eventually your reason for failure is going to be the small component you're expecting them to make. Probably it's better for you to pass a headcount back to them so that eventually the end goal can happen, right? But when you don't have this transparency, everybody is so myopic. It's almost like I give this example to my team. The customer wants to buy a Tesla, but each team is so busy building a engine or a steering wheel or a beautiful seat. If you give them the whole picture, in the end, all of you are working towards that Tesla which your customer wants to buy. They will all have to come together. How do you do this with data? First, got to get the data across business and financials, and then superimpose it with the headcount planning, the skills planning, the financial aspect of workforce investments you're doing. Where do you hire in Romania or India? But in the end, it really boils down to using data and insights in a connected, continuous, aligned manner. And then we can definitely start talking about like the basic data layer is there, descriptive, what happened, why it happened, predictive, what could happen next, and then also prescriptive. Now again, infuse more, if the data is connected, and even the market data, what is happening, what is your competition doing, right? So bring that rich data layer, then connect it with people analytics, and then do your workforce planning. In the end, again, you will make people happier if you're delivering outcomes because your budgets will grow, you'll get more support from your leadership. So it's a kind of like thriving people and thriving companies, I think, is a virtuous loop. They all both infuse each other, and they both will thrive if the data is brought in a cohesive manner. And then you have the right level of questions being asked, all ends, like maybe you give less budget, maybe the outcome is too crazy for the small team, maybe the teams you're trying to hire in Romania do not exist in Romania, you need to move your data center somewhere else. Whatever the questions will be, I think the the data connectedness and the trust that builds around sharing the right level of data with every stakeholder and even helping them understand how you are dependent on each other. So the collaborative piece of analytics, right? That is also very critical for us to think of. It's not just about my dashboard, it's about our collective dashboard with our collective goal, which we need to drive together on. And then take your AI, for a drive, like ask the right questions, trust it. I love your what you said, like, though, why take no for an answer, why take yes for an answer? I have this framework of give me 4 answers and then tell me which one is best and convince me, it's level 2 or level 3 or level 4. First one is always do nothing. Fourth is always completely go crazy and do something radically different. Normally between 2 and 3 debates happen. But even inviting those debates, I think, creates that forum of trust, which becomes important for us to make decision making. So
Take
hopefully,
AI for a ride. Thank you, Manisha. And great model. I love the people, the outcomes, financial, but data at the center. Thank you, my friend. Shivendra.
Yeah, thanks. I think I agree with most of the comments my fellow panelists made so far. And I would just give one real example how the prediction is been happening at our end. So it's I think as rightly said that it's not about technology, it's about asking better questions. What is it that you want to be answered by the people? So for example, uh, as simple as pulse. So, of course, when somebody resigns, we can sit with them. Hey, what happened? Can you please tell me how can I retain you? What can we do to have you stay back? And at the same time, with the pulse running, with the thoughtful questions, with the quizzes or options to choose from, eventually across the organizations, no matter how many people are there, how many functions are there, then what happens is that you see if somebody is, let's say, on scale of 1 to 5, if being rated something, if somebody is on 5, possibly it's a green, and towards 1 it's red. And if I see in a particular function being more of red, it's like, okay, this part of organization is more red, and it's surprising. That's where the fire is. I need to just be ready with my fire extinguisher, go over there and talk to them. And that's what is prediction about, that you predicted and you went talk to them, and you before the damage done, you possibly just saved everybody's hard work, and you kind of talk to them, you got their issues resolved, and they're there happily growing. Of course, there are people who would make up their mind and they would go, but at the same time, this is how, just one simple example that I wanted to share for us to predict and save the assets to stay there and grow your company.
Thank you, my friend. Quasivo.
Thank you so much. I think I'll keep it straight to the point, because so much of the point that I would have loved to share, my colleagues have already shared them on asking the right questions and then on issues of predictive data. But at the same time, I just wanted to add that, it starts with the data that you already have. Sometimes you don't need a sophisticated AI platform to try and analyze and get data for us, but let's start with the data that you already have. Look at your absenteeism, look at what is happening with your turnover, look at the learning participation, and asking the right questions will be the questions like, what is this data that we currently have telling us about 6 months from now? Then you can know what you can do. Predictive analysis isn't just about the tool that we use to gather data. This is about curiosity and the discipline to act before the problem matures. But there comes a time when now that problem matures and the turnover is very high, the absenteeism is very high, and you can't really tackle it well at that time. But you start when before the problem really matures. And when you talked about analytics, it gives leaders visibility. It helps leaders to know who can do what, where, and when. And during rapid operational changes, that insight allows you to redeploy skills instead of hiring reactively. So that predictive analytics will help you to really think through the skills mapping. Then we realize that in several occasions on administrative staff. In my capacity in the hospital, they have clinical support by training. All our clinical staff, they go through the mandatory clinical training every year, but the administrative staff do not go through the same. So there is some kind of skills gap in terms of how the administrative staff work together with the clinical staff. So by cross-training and repositioning them, it improves patient coverage and reducing overtimes, because now everyone understands their role and they can support each other. So analytics in this sense becomes the backbone of agility. It allows organization to pivot with precision rather than with panic. So that is how I kind of understand and analyze it. And one of the key things that I do to really gather data, and data alone, finally, it's not about combining hard information from the staff, but we can also get data or information from interacting with people, informal feedback loops. On a week-to-week basis, I do rounds around the hospital. I check the staff where they work. I sit down in the clinicals with the nurses, with the doctors. I have a chat with them. And through the feedback I get from them, that's what completes the data that I already had. Because they will share something. The human nature really plays a big role in compiling and finishing up the data. So the goal is to make analytics a reflection of real people, not to filter or that flattens them. No. When you listen to both the numbers and narratives of people, that's when inclusion starts to live within your data. Then you have the right information and you know how to analyze that information better. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, my friend. And before Dr. P, before you bring us home, my friend, and no pressure. I know how you do, and you do it well. I want to take a moment to recognize that yes, Shavindra had to drop off. It's always a balance of personal and professional, and both combined and data, right? I want to thank Hacking HR. I want to also thank our panelists. So give them some love in the chat. Please, please, please stay tuned for our next panel, which is Agile Talent Models for Hybrid and Remote Teams. Woof, I gotta have to stay tuned for that though too. But Dr. P, bring us home, my friend.
You got it. I'm just going to give you a closing thought, and we're going to leave it at that. For me, in people analytics, we trust the data, but never forget the people behind the numbers. That's all I have.
Okay, mic drop, my friend. Thank you all so much. Stay tuned for the rest of day 3. Be well, be safe, my friends.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to day 3, the final day of our Talent Management and Workforce Strategy Summit. It's so lovely to be here with you today. I'm Malvika Jitmalani, and I'm dialing in from Chicago. I'm the founder of Activist Group and Women Shaping AI. This is our second panel today, and our topic for this session is Agile Talent Models for Hybrid and Remote Teams. Now, we'd love to know where you're dialing in from, so let us know in the chat where you are in the world today. And while you're doing that, I want to say a big thank you to Jessa and the rest of the Hacking HR team backstage for bringing us this incredible content and programming. Jessa, if you wouldn't mind, please bring our panelists onto the screen. Welcome, panelists. Thank you for joining us. Before we dive into our topic for this session, let's introduce our panelists. So we will go clockwise as you appear on my screen, starting with you, Candice.
Hi, everyone. My name is Candice Giesbrecht. I'm the Director of People, Culture, and Engagement for the Canadian Mental Health Association. We're called the Kelowna District Branch, but that's our colonial name. We're located on the traditional unceded ancestral territories of the Okanagan Nation and Syilx people. So very, very privileged and happy to be here with you all today.
Great, Melissa.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Laswell, and I am a global talent executive with over 20 years of experience leading global enterprise-wide talent strategies for organizations navigating hypergrowth, transformation, and disruption. And I've worked at Apple, Walmart, as well as Pitney Bowes. And today I am the founder and principal of Agile Horizons Talent Consultants, where I help companies connect people strategy to business performance through workforce planning, talent management, and AI-enabled solutions. So my career has been about building agile, scalable frameworks that really equip organizations to thrive through constant change and transformation. So I'm really excited to be on this panel and to speak with all of you today.
Welcome, Jamie.
Hello, everybody. Good to be here. My name is Jamie Conrad. I'm the Director of People at UFCU, University Federal Credit Union here in Austin, Texas. So shout out to all my Texas people. I've got about 18 years of HR experience leading different communities and conversations, and have been had the pleasure of working in a couple of organizations now that lean into agile frameworks, agile mindsets, and excited to be part of this conversation.
Hello, hi everyone. This is Sinem here. I'm dialing in from Barcelona today, but it's not sunny, I have to say. It's a little bit rainy, unfortunately. So I am a digital transformation expert, and for the last 14 years, I've been doing this in the domain of HR. And in my latest role at Sony, I have been heading the global HR platform, overall governance, service management, and HRIS strategy for globally. So happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, and I am DJ Campbell. Currently serve as the Chief HR Officer for a Midwest-based healthcare system. 15 to 20 years of experience in HR, ranging in a number of different industries. Really, really excited to be here. I see we have somebody from Canada, so I am not the northernmost individual in the group, which typically doesn't happen for me. So appreciate that. But I think what a great topic, and looking forward to discuss with the other panelists.
Terrific. Thank you all. I can already tell this is going to be a great discussion, so we're going to dive right in. We're not wasting any time. Melissa, I want to start with you. From your experience, what is the biggest misconception organizations have about agile talent models, and how do you help them reframe it? And while our panelists share our thoughts, please also share your knowledge and expertise in the comments as well. Let's learn from each other. So Melissa, let's start with you, and then others, please feel free to unmute and join the conversation as you see fit.
That's a great question. And, one of the biggest misconceptions that, I've seen is that organizations really equate agile with speed. They think it's about moving faster. They think it's about hiring faster or reorganizing teams overnight. But I truly feel that true agility isn't about pace. It's about adaptability and alignment. It's the ability to pivot talent and skills as priorities shift, while also keeping people connected to purpose and clarity. Agile talent models are really about designing systems that make work more fluid and responsive, where skills become the currency. I feel it's shifting from rigid org charts to dynamic talent ecosystems that flex around business needs. And that can mean internal marketplaces. It can be in project-based assignments or reskilling pathways that really let talent move towards impact, not just hierarchy. And when I work with clients, I help them reframe agility as a mindset, not a structure. It's not about tearing down hierarchy. It's about building systems that are responsive and can pivot, adapt, and change. We start by mapping how work actually flows, not just how org charts are designed and not just looking at headcount. Then we start to look at the friction points, like where priorities are shifting, but talent can't move with them, and design frameworks that create and balance both structure and flexibility with clear governance and defined roles and empowered teams that are operating within adaptive systems. I also think that leaders play a significant role in enabling that mindset shift. When I work with leaders as a consultant, I like to share my own personal experiences around setting the tone by modeling transparency and curiosity. In my last role as a global VP, I was leading a global TA organization that was geographically dispersed across 15 different countries. And when we introduced agile ways of working, I invited the team to co-create the process by using mural boards to brainstorm what agility meant for us as a team. And that inclusive approach built buy-in and surfaced creative ideas that we might not have otherwise have thought of and we might have missed. And the shift really happens when leaders move from telling people what to do to creating the space for them to problem solve and contribute. And that's when agility becomes a part of the culture and it's not just seen as a project. And I feel like when organizations really make that shift, agility stops feeling chaotic. It becomes a strategic capability, one that helps people thrive through change instead of getting lost in it. And that's where I feel the real transformation happens.
I love this reframe of agility as a mindset. And I love what you said about how agility doesn't have to feel and be chaotic. Jamie, I want to come to you next. How can people leaders keep distributed teams aligned, connected, and accountable when communication styles and time zones vary so widely?
Yeah, I think Melissa touched on this a little bit. It's definitely, it needs to be taken into consideration with the systems and how the systems are developed. Distributed teams succeed, when people leaders stop trying to micromanage and they stop looking at it as time and seat. So there's an opportunity there to think about it in the terms of business outcomes. How people work is more important than when people work, and creating clarity around business outcomes rather than how much time you're spending on in meetings and on the calendars it becomes more important. Weaving connection into the systems in the flow of work also helps when you think about different time zones, different cultures. You still have a core culture of your organization that you're trying to drive, regardless of time zones, regardless of employee geographic location. And so making sure that you have an opportunity, or your employees have an opportunity to feel that culture within the systems that they work, whether that is 5-minute pulse checks, stand-ups, ad hoc stand-ups, or Slack channels that are related to wins and fails, making sure that it doesn't matter what that time zone is, employees have an opportunity to feel that culture. And then sometimes it's about social norms and communication contracts. Some organizations, because of cultural differences, it becomes important to understand, and especially in fully remote environments, what those social norms are. How fast do you respond to emails? What's the expectation for Slack messages? Those things can just help make somebody feel like they are more connected, and it also gives clarity around what the communication expectations are.
Beautifully said. I love the idea of focusing on outcomes and not how long someone is in their seat. And I love this idea also of setting some team norms. So many points of friction in teams arise because we haven't set norms appropriately and talked about things like response times and set expectations and created alignment among team members. So Sinem, I want to come to you next. How can global HR teams use systems and governance to enable agility and collaboration across hybrid and remote teams?
Wow, perfect question. And I think, by the way, that's also beautifully connects with what Melissa and Jamie has been saying, because I think they have also mentioned that when we are talking about agility in a global HR setup, it is not about the structures, or it's not about the roles, it's not about the tier model that we have. It's actually about the flow of everything, for the data, the activities, right? So the flow of information, and how we enable engagement across boundaries and different time zones. I mean, I would look at it in three domains, probably, or from three perspectives. First, definitely is the systems, because in a global HR setup, you cannot rely at the end on people to be online 24/7 or at the same time. So what we need is that our systems are actually, we have the platforms that would enable that asynchronous collaboration. And the asynchronous collaboration I'm talking here is when we can enable people to engage with goals, feedback, learning, and talent. I don't know, with the talent programs that we might have, when they are able to do it. So based on the time that fits them, that is the continuity of the flow. So for me, systems that enable that is definitely number one. The second is the data, because the data flow and the data visibility, accessibility based on, data democratization, basically, is key to this, is a central topic to that. So if we want to be agile, and not from only HR's perspective, also from a business perspective, we need people to work on a single source of truth. So whether that is coming from your core HCM, your Workday, Oracle, I don't know, or learning systems, workforce management systems, right, from SAP. So what is really important that in a given time, in a real time, you and me, we can access the same truth of the data. So that is going to enable us to move fast and be more agile. And the third dimension that I think is super key, not that I've been working in that domain, but is governance. But the governance I see as a collaboration enabler, not as a constraint in a global setup, especially. It is about defining the shared way of working, having clear principles, having guardrails that your regional teams, local teams can work towards. So if I combine the three of these systems, data and governance, I would mainly say that, the agility is best achieved when the three works invisibly in the background. So that it moves, the flow is seamless and is enabled.
I love this idea of a shared common source of truth. And I'm looking at the comments here from our listeners. Ali says, love that move towards impact, not hierarchy. I think that had to do with Jamie's comment. And then Shauna said, pivot with precision, not panic. Love that. Great. So please keep sharing your comments and thoughts as we are monitoring them live. I want to come to Candice next. I'm wondering about belonging and engagement. So how can leaders foster a strong sense of belonging and engagement when the workforce is constantly shifting between virtual and physical spaces?
Yeah, awesome question. And I'm also just really happy that this topic made it onto the agenda. You know, I think post-pandemic there was sort of a, can we just not talk about this anymore? There was a sense of, you know, fatigue around all of this, but you know, and especially with return to office mandates happening and you know, some pushbacks with you know, in between employees and these tensions. I feel like it's more important than ever that we talk about this and that we consider you know, some of the learnings that we've been able to achieve, and also, you know, really continue the work of trying to figure out how to do it better. I just love so much of what's already been said, and everything that's been said contributes to belonging for sure. So I won't duplicate that. But a couple of things I just want to mention ahead of time. There was a great body of research that actually happened. I think it was in 2013. It was prior to the pandemic. And there were a couple of organizational psychologists, Canadian, who given a shout out to Dr. Thomas O'Neill and Dr. Laura Hambly, who sought to find out what are some of the capabilities that are unique and required for leaders. And they really wanted to understand, are all workers cut out to be good, you know, remote workers? And so, and then the research has continued beyond that. And what they discovered was that, yes, some people are better suited to being a remote or hybrid employee. And yes, some leaders are better suited to distributed environments. And I mean, the good news is that we can learn and that we can grow. And so, so some of the tips that has come out of their work is first of all to have a look at your own capabilities, to really look in the mirror and to consider, like, you know, is my typical style more of passive reactive leadership, where, you know, the management by walking around, which was popularized, I think it was in the 80s. If your style is management by walking around and you count on seeing people in order to think of what you need to be covering with them, that's not going to work if you have remote or hybrid employees. And so, or if you're more of a reactive or passive kind of leader, to help people with belonging and inclusion and engagement and ultimately productivity. These are workplaces. We got to get work done. And we want to value our people in the middle of it, but leaders have to be intentional. They have to be active and intentional, and they have to do a lot more of their thinking out loud. And so whether it's out loud in a conversation, or whether it's out loud in chats, or whether it's out loud in some of the documents or charters or, you know, async communication that we've done, but the onus, I believe, is really on the leader. And so often what happens is that it's left to the employee to ask for what they need, or to say when they're feeling left out, or to, you know, and that kind of stuff is super frustrating and really demotivating. Like when I have to keep saying, could somebody take minutes for the meeting that I wasn't at, right? Like that gets super frustrating and doesn't feel like am I valued at all, right? And so so when we're thinking about belonging, like there's so much that can happen on the leader. And then I would suggest that leaders also need to consider, what are those capabilities that make for a good remote or distributed or hybrid employee? There is research that's available for that. And then that has to be a part of your learning and development, helping people to learn, to be good, to be self-directed a little bit, right? Like what does you know, how does it go when it's just you and the desk? Like, how does it go? What's your part? What's our part to try and help this work? And so to also enable all of that two-way feedback and multiple two-way feedback mechanisms are critical. And we know that feedback is conditioned upon trust. So I will only tell you what I'm really thinking if I feel like I can trust that it's safe to do so, and that you will hear me, and that you will do something with what I tell you. Because also, if now I've told you 3 months in a row and I haven't heard or seen anything, then what's the point? And so then I don't feel like I belong. And so, so in education, it's very popular. I have a good friend who's a school principal, and he says that something that is critical is that every classroom and every environment is approached with a universal learning design. So what that means is that they design learning so that it's not just learning is done this way for the mainstream students, and then learning is done this way for those students with special needs. But instead, like everything is designed so that everyone is included. There's a universal sort of approach to things. And I think that's the case when it comes to distributed or hybrid or remote kinds of situations. We have to always consider someone might not be in the room. And who isn't in the room, we have to that has to be like on fixed, like not editable on the agenda. Who isn't here, and how are we going to make sure that they're included or informed or understand, and so on. And then my final thing is just a warning. And so Roberta Sawatsky is another Canadian researcher who looked at hybrid leadership in particular. And the big risk that showed up in the hundreds of people that she interviewed was around proximity equity. So she uncovered the risk that the people who are present in the office or who have the closest access to leaders get promoted or get more opportunities or get or belong more. So they're better informed. They're included more. And so watching for proximity equity is the big risk.
Thank you. Super powerful insights. I love this idea of universal learning design. And thank you for sharing the study about proximity equity as well. Amika says in the comments, we should think about having a digital workplace strategy because the whole essence of the strategy should be about output regardless of time zone or location. So DJ, I want to come to you next. What strategies have you seen work best for balancing flexibility with fairness and performance in hybrid work arrangements?
Absolutely. I'm frantically writing as my fellow panelists are talking because I think that I've pulled something from each of you that I think I could actually add into this this answer. I go back to what Melissa started with, and I think it really comes down to that mind shift set. We are attempting, or not even attempting, we are breaking down barriers that have existed for decades in the workplace on how we work and how we lead and how we get things done. And that's going to take time. And that, I think it goes back to her mindset on being agile. Like, we need to create adaptable business models or workplace models where we can pivot when we need to, because things are changing at just a rate that I think we're never going to catch up to unless we build these models differently. And so it comes down to really working flexibility with purpose. So what is going to work best for the team member, for the leader, for the organization to help get the work done? And it's not going to be the same for everybody in different environments. Sometimes it will be the same. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit different. But we have to also, I love what Candace said about proximity equity. Equity is going to continue to be a buzzword, I think, as we continue to journey into this hybrid and mobile work environment in the future. I think a lot about how do we connect with people day in and day out. And I think a lot of that comes down to that leadership role and how do we create trust within the business world and in the environment? Because at the end of the day, I think so much of the success of being able to work in these environments comes down to that leader's ability to develop trust quickly and effectively so that every employee feels like they can share those concerns that they're having for if things aren't going as they had hoped or planned. That's really, really tough because we have not always taught our leaders how to develop trust quickly or just trust in general. And so we have taught them how to be more authoritarian, to get things done, to manage workflows and processes. And now we're really going to have to back up a little bit and teach them how to be really, really strong leaders. And that's going to take a little bit of time as well. I think when it comes to really being fair and providing fairness, it's really going back to what performance management looks like. And I know everybody hates performance management. I hate performance management just as much as the next person. But I believe that if you create the dashboards or you've got a shared understanding of what success looks like with your team, that's really going to help create that transparency and that trust. Right now, I think that we've got a fair amount of leaders that are managing, people in desks and time that they're in the workplace, but really we have to switch that mindset to focusing on managing performance. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we have shared goals or shared outcomes that we're going to begin to work towards. Some people I think are doing that really well today. I think there's a lot of people that need to maybe go back to the drawing board and really figure out how they're going to create that synergy within their team. And then last but not least, it's really going to come down to having really intentional conversations about, what's discussed at the water cooler, what does the meeting after the meeting look like, and how do we continue to get that information? Because that's an important part of work. How you set those social norms within your group is really going to dictate, the success of your group long term. And I think, again, you have to go back to that leader. You have to be very transparent. You have to create that trust, and you have to begin to call those things out so that everybody has shared accountability of what that looks like in the future. So you've got a good roadmap on how you're going to create that synergy, that trust, and ultimately those great business outcomes in the future.
I just make a comment on something that was said. I love what you're talking about, and I think it's more than just like the water coolers and the intentionality. It's also like not trying to recreate the office in a remote environment. It's about understanding the digital aspect and designing for digital. It's about understanding that this is a different way to be intentional, that there are different opportunities for connection and for communication. So it's unlearning the things that you mentioned along the way, and then not just trying to recreate those in a different environment, but think completely differently. And I think that's part of what that agile mindset is being able to be vulnerable and pivot when needed and think about new creative ways that we can show up for work.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'll add to as well, because this is brought up multiple times across the panel, was really about leadership, right? And I think that the leadership skills are so critical. And I think it's something that needs to be a part of a learning and development plan for when you become a leader and you have hybrid and remote teams, that you're learning how to lead in a new and different way. Tying back to what Jamie said, as well as DJ was alluding to as well, because these are different skills. They're a different skill set that needs to be trained and developed and coached on. We already see gaps with individuals being managers, right? Being highly directive versus leaders that are highly inspirational. And so I think it's identifying those gaps with your leaders in the organization and be able to build those roadmaps and those learning maps to be able to help them upskill so that they really can create an inclusive as well as psychological safe environment for their hybrid and remote teams.
I think that's a great comment, both Jamie and Melissa. I go back and I always think about years ago when I would go into interviews with executives or other leaders, and they would talk about the soft skills, and maybe they'd place those soft skills to the side as they're not as important as more of the technical framework and leadership. And I think we really have to, as a community, begin to reframe those soft skills as power skills. Because when we talk about a skills-based mindset or an agile talent model, the leaders that have those power skills in play, the critical thinking, the ability to communicate, the ability to be vulnerable, emotional intelligence, all of those pieces that maybe we've taken for granted in the past, the leaders that have those existing are going to be the leaders that win. And so how do we take those skills that have often been said as maybe not as important as others and reframe the organization so that those are the most important skills that we're bringing to the workplace?
And DJ, I'll just share too, those are the skills that you just mentioned that are going to be increasingly important now in the world of AI, right? And all of this data fluency that we're now embedding within the work that we're doing too as well. So I think that those soft skills are so critical. So great point.
I couldn't agree more. Our technical skills are becoming more and more commoditized as it becomes easier to acquire knowledge and expertise with AI. And the power skills are going to be a true differentiator. So panelists, I would love to know from anyone who wants to chime in here, really, what are the most effective ways to identify and develop future leaders in hybrid and remote organizations? You've talked about how leadership is changing and the skills required are changing, but how do you effectively identify and develop future leaders in hybrid and remote environments?
I can, jump in and forgive looking at my chin here, but I have it up on my bulletin board. Again, I strongly recommend that there is research out there about the skills that you need. And so competencies around like providing clear expectations, constructive two-way feedback, support for autonomy and flexibility, how to facilitate, and this requires some tech, use of good tech tools, facilitating collaboration and co-creation. But vulnerability was like in the research, like the leader going first. And I can't remember, was it Melissa? I think somebody's already mentioned vulnerability, and the leader going first. And so us taking the risk as leaders to make it okay for employees to show up as well. But there are lists of learning and development capabilities. And so the how is find those lists and be intentional about developing them in yourself and in others.
And I think it's really important to keep in mind that leadership is not title into, promotion into title. It is the behaviors that you're trusted to model in your organization. Now, whether that's based off of values or mission or, the purpose of your organization, it could vary by organization, but it doesn't lessen the fact that modeling of behaviors is the key to true leadership. And we talked a little bit about skills development. I think it's important to understand that at all levels of the organization, because I think that's something else that Agile talent models take into consideration when it comes to skills aren't just those people that are in leadership titled positions. They are skills that are needed across the organization, regardless of position that they're in. And so how do we not just create leadership in such a way that it's aligned with title and management, but also throughout your organization, so that more and more of your employees are showing up with those skills of empathy and balancing their technical skills with emotional calibration and self-awareness. That's part of setting up your Agile talent model, so that vulnerability is baked into the way that we work.
Well, and I think too, because when you look at your team members, right, you're looking at their potential. And when you're in a hybrid team or remote team, it looks very, very different. It's not the person that's able to engage with others from across the table or who's the loudest in the room. It's really about creating impact from a distance. And so you're really observing how people are connecting, how they're influencing, how they're driving outcomes. And I think that's going to become increasingly important with that you start using tools that help you to see that success. Like I mentioned, brainstorming tools like Mural, it's a favorite, so I'm going to keep mentioning it, to really help you, spot out problem solvers and collaborators who might not otherwise be visible. So I think it's actually a really unique way to be able to find potential and talent. And it allows you to then be able to invest in them and give them stretch projects or mentoring assignments guidance or peer coaching too as well, to be able to help develop their leadership skills. And, we talked a little bit about, how leaders need to lead too as well with remote and hybrid teams. And I really feel it's through connecting and through clarity and communication. And that's going to become, I think, increasingly important as we continue to work in these new agile ways.
I think everything that has been said up to this point. So I'm going to go D, all of the above. And the one thing that I'll just add is it can't be these decisions or these discussions or these expectations can't live in a silo in an HR centric, division of the company. This has to be discussed, I think, with all levels of leadership, including whoever the ultimate, the CEO of the organization is. And so you've got clarity and you've got consistency, and it's not just being led by one single department within the organization. I think that's a huge key when it comes to how it's adopted and how it's continually used over time. So great comments, panel.
Yeah, and I think I will just add, another combination to this discussion, calling it digital empathy, right? Especially if we're talking about now remote teams and developing our future leaders in the sense that they are adapted to work in remote or hybrid. That's what we call them now. Of course, tomorrow, I don't know what will be the setup. We will see about that too. But I think that digital empathy in that sense is very key. We all know at the end that, and by the way, I have to say that, Candace, I really liked it when you called out intention, right? Because we are talking about skills being the new currency and skills-based organizations. But the first thing starts is about identifying the critical skills that we need as the organization, and then start building the talent, according to that. So with purpose, knowing where we are going. So for me, that is also super key. So thanks for calling that out. That for me, that I want to underline that. That's key.
Wow, so many great insights. And I hate to be the one to remind us that we only have 3 minutes left. But alas, all good things must come to an end. Thank you, everyone in the comments, for your wonderful insights. Let's make these last couple minutes super impactful. So panelists, what is one actionable change that you think organizations can make this quarter, next quarter, to build more agile, high-performing hybrid teams? And this time, we will go in reverse order to how we did the introductions. So DJ, let's start with you.
I think the biggest actionable thing you can do today is begin to talk about it. Begin to surface the concerns, begin to surface the issues you're seeing, and make it the new water cooler talk that you're going to have with every person in the organization. So I think it's just comes down to making sure that you're addressing the concern in the room that nobody wants to talk about.
And then I would say that linking it to what DJ said, connect your systems to those conversations. Enable people to have that online or remote, diverse, distributed collaboration possible.
I think it's taking a look at your goal setting, how you're developing your goals, what those goals are, why they're the goals that you've chosen as an organization, and do they still matter? Are they still the right ones? And how do you enable the teams to align their goals to the business's goals across the entire organization? So I think it's a redesign or a relook at the goal setting that includes visibility and transparency, and it includes the ability to understand and share the why for those goals.
My advice would be starting by defining how work is getting done and not just where, and pick one process or team and run a small sprint, a small agile sprint, and test cross-functional collaboration, iterate on outcomes, and measure what is working. I really feel that small wins build confidence and it also builds momentum. And when people experience agility and not just hear about it, the shift really sticks. And so I would start small, learn fast, and scale with what works.
Brilliant. Oh my goodness. What do I possibly add at this point except to say, look in the mirror is my final piece. It starts with each of us. And so, even talking, there's been a couple of good reminders. I feel like I think about this stuff a lot, but there are always those pieces that I could do a little bit better, or it's been way more than a minute since I've intentionally thought about or evaluated or asked people, how am I doing in this? And so look in the mirror and pursue that two-way feedback.
Wonderful insights. Those last 2 minutes were absolute gold. So thank you all so much for being here today. Thanks to our panelists for sharing your time and your insights with us, and everyone in the comments for your participation and energy that you brought to this conversation today. Enjoy the rest of the summit, and we'll see you at our next session, which is tying talent metrics to business performance and ROI. Thank you, everyone. Be well.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Thank you so much for being here. My name is Bricia Ceja, and I'm going to be moderating today's discussion. So today, it's all about tying talent metrics to business performance and ROI. Now, we know, because I think most of us here are HR professionals, that this is a topic that really excites me. You know, as HR professionals, I think we've all seen how people data can either be really powerful, but if it's not used right, it can just be another dashboard, right, that nobody looks at. So the real question we'll be exploring today is, how do we connect the dots between talent metrics and actual business outcomes? Not just turnover or engagement scores, which are really, really important, but how those numbers reflect innovation, productivity, and growth. So before we dive in, I actually am going to ask Jessa to bring in the panelists for today. Hi, everybody. Welcome. And I would love for our audience to learn a little bit about you. So why don't I will ask each of you to please take 1 minute and tell us about yourself. So why don't we start, Connor, with you, if that's okay, because you're the first person in my screen.
Yes, happy to. And for whatever reason, my camera just stopped working. So I will work on that as the other folks introduce themselves. But hello, everyone. My name is Connor Sweeney. I am the Vice President and Head of People and Talent for Form Health. For those that don't know, Form Health is the national leader in science-based obesity care and management. So we are a fully comprehensive digital healthcare company focused on obesity health and cardiometabolic health outcomes. I am located in beautiful, sunny Southern California, and this is my second opportunity to speak at one of these events, and very much love doing so. So it's great to be here with all of you.
Thank you so much, Connor. Birgit, am I saying that correctly?
Almost, Birgit.
Thank you.
You are good. Hi, everyone. My name is Birgit White. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, U.S., and I lead HR for large organizations. My most recent experience was with the Adecco Group as SVP of HR for Americas. My experiences have always been within the business partner space as well as talent management. So today's topic is marrying my favorite of all areas of HR. So really excited to be here today. Like Connor, I spent a number of times with the Hacking HR team on these panels, and it's always good fun and good shared learning all together. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Jerry?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Jerry Doris, and I am the Chief People Officer at a company called JustWorks. We are a HR tech company and services where we provide PEO, benefits, payroll, and EOR services to small businesses. I have spent my entire career in the HR and people space and have been a Chief People Officer for a better part of a decade at large-scaled organizations that have both been on the PE side, but also publicly traded, and now I'm venture capital backed. And so I love talking about this topic because I think so often we find ourselves in spaces where trying to make that connection can be really hard. So I'm looking forward to discussing this with the fellow panelists, but also with this community.
Thank you so much. And Jeanette?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Greetings from Tucson, Arizona. Lovely to be here with this group. My name is Janet Rico Urig, and I serve Pima Community Colleges as the Director of Human Resources, and the areas I oversee are employee relations and talent management, in addition to talent acquisition. So there's a lot going on there, and just like with trying to tie talent metrics to performance and ROI in my day-to-day. So I'm really excited about this topic. Have, like many of my peer panelists, have been with Hacking HR before, and so really excited to be back. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I'm sure this is going to be an amazing conversation. because you come from you have a lot of experience in different areas. So I'm excited about this. So let's get started with our topic today. And I would actually like to start. I have a question for each of you, so a specific question for each of our panelists. And then after we go through those 4 questions, answer, as you prefer. So let's see. Let's start with Jerry. Sorry. My question for you is, how can CHROs translate people data into clear business insights that drive executive decision making?
Yeah, I always say this often, that data without insights or without context is just data. And so I think so often we push data dashboards, or we push just like data and expect people to understand what that means. And I would say, just taking a step back, as like people professionals, we're business leaders first. Whatever room we're in, we're business leaders first. And so my joke often with our CFO is that I want to be able to speak just as fluently about the business from a financial perspective as he does. And so when you take that lens, in addition to people metrics, like you start to see different things from a different lens. And so I'll give you some really tactical examples. I'm sure everybody's been in the room when you're like, a lot of people are probably starting to do budget planning for next year, and you're seeing how many heads that they're going to hire for the following year. And yet nobody asks the question of like, I wonder what recruiting capacity is. I wonder if did we front load those heads? Did we spread them out over quarter? Because I imagine a lot of you are like me. You sit there and then you realize they front loaded every single head, particularly on the revenue side, in Q1. And you're already starting from a deficit from Q1. And so this is a really basic one, but knowing your capacity for your recruiters, right? Like how many people can they hire? Particularly, we'll use the revenue recruiters. How many people can they hire on a monthly basis that will then flow into how can we actually hire? And so it's like really playing that very, very tactical, if we have a certain revenue number, backing that into how many heads do we need, then backing that into productivity, then backing that into onboarding and ramping, and then thinking about at the very, very basic level, like what is my capacity for my recruiting team? And so I have often started the year on the back foot, because like there hasn't been that math or that insight of being like, can we actually hire the number of people that we're making the assumption? And so, my recommendation in general is like, start with what data you've got. How do you tie that to actual business metrics, and think back? May it be revenue, may it be NPS, may it be renewal rates. There's always something that from a people metrics, you can find that correlation and then drive your insights from that.
I love that. Start with the data that you already have, because I think many times we want to measure everything, even things that we.
Yeah. I think we lost
started. Something that I forgot to mention for our audience is, after we go through our first 4 questions, you can add your questions on LinkedIn, and I will try to read them as well. So let's move on to my next question. And my second question is for you, Bridget. What's the best way to connect talent initiatives to measurable outcomes without oversimplifying the human side of performance?
Absolutely. First, Jerry, I have to say I was nodding and smiling as you were responding, because I too have been on the back foot starting the year and saying, oh goodness, how did we get here? But that's where that close partnership with finance and the business leaders at the beginning becomes so critical. To that end, one of the areas that I think about when how to best connect the talent initiatives is to establish a baseline. Before you begin any large scale or small scale talent initiative, we always remember that we don't do HR for HR's sake. It's not because it's exciting for us and it's a new, shiny new thing that we want to roll out. We start with what is the business case or the business imperative that is requiring action. Now, ideally, it's proactive. So we're looking around the corner as HR professionals to think and anticipate what might be something that we need to put in place from an intervention or solution standpoint to support the business before they even realize that there's something that could be coming. Many of our HR peers are in that same space now as they proactively think through and partner with business from an AI standpoint. What can we do proactively to support the business? So I say always start with that in mind. What is a proactive need? Then establish a baseline. If we're going to measure something, we first need to understand where do we sit today in that area of focus. So if we say, for example, we want to upskill some of our employees in a certain training because we anticipate the business will be moving into a different direction. What is the baseline understanding of that skill? Or what is the productivity level today? Then based upon that, we say you would then move forward to initiate the talent intervention or solution. Based on where you are today, here's where we see as an area of opportunity. We'd like to work to fix that. You understand, and then you implement it. And after that, you measure. So it's very simple in that sense. Understand the challenge, where you are at today in the baseline, whether it's productivity of the business, whether it is training, where is it that you want to go implement that solution? And then thereafter, you measure what has been the change. That helps from a business standpoint to share the ROI on the investment, on the activity by displaying the growth or the change based on what you've measured at the beginning and at the end of the process. It's a bit difficult if you wait until the very end to say, let's measure and understand and tell a story. But we have to start with that data in mind at the onset and then institute any changes. And then we check and adjust based on how we're performing thereafter as a business.
Thank you so much. Yes, you bring up a very important point, because you say we wait until the very end. And usually having this data mindset should be from the very beginning for the entire team.
Yes, because oftentimes if you roll out something, you might be solving for the wrong problem. And then you got this great story to tell your business leaders and they're not resonating with that as a challenge that needed to be solved.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. All righty, moving to our third question. My third question is for you, Connor. How can leaders ensure that talent analytics actually inform actions? So not just reporting information, but especially in fast-moving, high-growth environments.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think my fellow panelists have hit on a few key points already that I'll build on. So look, I mean, in high-growth environments, I think we've all likely seen or know that data can easily become a bit of a rear view mirror type exercise, kind of a descriptive rather than a directional forward looking. So, from my perspective, I feel that the most effective leaders don't treat talent analytics as just purely reporting, right? They treat it as truly a catalyst for action. And so the goal isn't to just measure everything. It's to surface kind of the few insights that matter most to decision-making in real time, whether that be tied to the particular meeting that you're in or the quarterly business review that you're a part of, or how you're thinking about strategic planning for next year, as Jerry touched on. So look, I think to build on that, there's a few things that are really important when you're thinking about how to turn analytics into action. I think one, and this is a bit of an obvious one, but we really need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to anchor metrics to business decisions, which Jerry also touched on a bit too, right? So being able to tie really important kind of key analytics directly to the operational and strategic questions that the business is already asking, right? So don't put the data into the presentation as just here's another HR kind of KPI, but kind of put it into the decision-making arena as hey, our understanding is our growth model is going to require A, B, C, and D next year. Here's the data from a people perspective that can help support the work that we're going to have to do to bring that reality to life, right? So whether it be the recruiting capacity numbers tied to, the outcomes the business is looking for from a, hiring for revenue perspective or something similar, right? So again, anchoring those metrics to the actual decisions. Look, I think the second thing is just building kind of insight to action loops. So I think it's really, really important, and likely all of us have seen this fall short in things like engagement survey, action planning, or what have you, but really embedding structured follow-ups after each reporting cycle to ensure that the data that you've just reviewed, all the really important insights that you've shared, are actually driving a sense of accountability in the organization, right? So, whether that be building 30, 60, 90-day action sprints with measurable kind of behavior changes tracked by people partners tied to a post-engagement survey result, or to Jerry's example, on a quarterly basis, making sure that you're really gut checking those kind of recruiter capacity insights with the hiring momentum. Like, it's really ensuring that insight to action loop is in full force. And then lastly, it's just really important that we always find the right balance between qualitative and quantitative data insight, right? So we know that numbers alone don't create movements. It is oftentimes the narratives around those numbers that do. And so, I think one of the hardest jobs that we have on the people side is really kind of combining that hard data with the why from things like our exit interviews or pulse surveys, or intricate data that we're pulling from our HRIS. So I think the storyline is just as impactful as the data itself. And so the blend of the two is really what's going to help to drive the necessary insight.
Thank you, Connor. You touched on a couple of very important points that I just want to make sure that don't get lost. So you talked about, following up and having that accountability from what comes out of the data and the metrics that you're measuring, and also the importance of quantitative and qualitative data, because I know that it has happened to me, and I'm sure to all of you all and the people in the audience, that sometimes we focus on one and forget about the other, right? Or maybe we don't find that right connection or balance between both of those types of data. So thank you so much for bringing it up. All right, and then my next question, Janet, this is for you. What challenges do HR teams face when tying metrics to ROI in organizations that don't yet have mature data systems or analytics culture?
Well, so many organizations have valuable data, people data scattered across multiple systems. I know that my peers have already said such good examples. So I will say that when you are in organizations that those insights are siloed, incomplete, potentially outdated, especially if there's no analytics culture, right? HR will often be struggle with even when data exists, it may not be clean or consistently entered, making it difficult to trust or analyze. So one of the ways to overcome that particular issue is to start with small data integration pilots. So if it's 2 or 3 systems, and I know dashboard is not the solution, but when you're trying to build, creating an initial dashboard that focuses on data accuracy, even the early basics of establishing what turnover or a high performer means across your enterprise, that can be really helpful. What I found in organizations that I've worked with, partnering with IT, or we are lucky at our community college to have an institutional research and analytics team. And so creating a single source of truth has been helpful for us in people metrics, even if it's that shared simple data set. Another piece that I've seen in organizations is really that limit, especially when you don't have an analytics culture, that limited data literacy, right? The analytical confidence for HR professionals and for business leaders may not feel comfortable interpreting or acting on the data. And without building shared understanding, analytics can really be perceived as an abstract or disconnected from real world decision making. So building that literacy across both your HR and organizational leadership, where we found success is doing short workshops on interpreting those dashboards. Correlation versus causation, right? Connor talked a little bit about that quality and quantity issue of components. So what we've encouraged is really cross-functional storytelling and HR presenting data alongside operational and financial leaders to help build shared interpretation skills. That has helped us develop data champions in each department so that people can see the relevance of people metrics in their day-to-day work. When you're thinking about cultural resistance to measurement, sometimes framing analytics as a tool for learning and improvement and not evaluation or control can be really helpful. So making sure, right, that psychological safety is built and used when you're talking about early metrics, and highlighting positive patterns can be helpful in overcoming that. And 100% communicating transparently. Show the employees how data will be used and how it benefits them. I love appreciative inquiry or strengths-based analytics. So showing folks what's working and what's not broken can be really helpful. In addition to linking those, like my peers have said, around the goals of the organization.
Love that. Thank you. I'm over here taking down all of notes from all of your answers because there's already, I know we're only 20 minutes in, but there's already so much useful information that you are all sharing. Thank you, Janet, for I really like this idea of having a single source of truth for the organization, right? Even if it's something small, like I think for many organizations, we think data, analytics, metrics, and we think, oh, we need to have like this super new and advanced software that we need to use. But I think starting small, Jerry, you mentioned this, starting with what you already have, and then working from there. So thank you all so much for answering this question. So I do have other questions, and I would love, you can answer if you feel called to do so. So my next question is, how can HR leaders link learning, engagement, and retention data to financial outcomes, such as productivity or profitability? And I think this is a question that has come up, and I've seen it many times, for example, from participants in our certificate programs. How do you make that connection? How do you make that link? Who would like to start?
So I can take a stab at it to start. One area for me that's really important is the learning link, and a skilled and knowledgeable workforce is more productive. Knowing how to do your role, knowing how to perform your job to a high level of effectiveness is critical to productivity. In that same vein, oftentimes retention is tied to that as well. Retention in the sense of employees who are also longer in role have a higher level of productivity. And the ways that we can encourage that retention, the right retention, I know one of the questions later on speaks to some of the measures that maybe we can move away from. So I say that, but retention in the sense of employees in role for a period of time increases their productivity. How do we increase employees in role for a longer period of time? Happy and engaged and well-skilled employees. So all of those pieces are with the level of storytelling help to bridge the gap between retention and productivity. What are the ways that we can retain employees? What are the ways that we encourage a workforce that is highly engaged, highly enthused to do their role and know how to do it effectively will impact productivity and in turn, financial outcomes and business performance.
I'll go next. I mean, I said it before, like we so often feel like we have to find new metrics. They're all there, right? Revenue's there, retention's there, retention of your customers is there, depending on what you do. And so tying it, I just building on what Brigitte just said, I was like, just tying it back to things that you already have. Like your engagement goes up, like start to look for the correlations. Like, did your engagement went up? Like, did your revenue go up? Did your performance go up? Did your productivity? I think a lot of us are are living in this world right now, particularly in AI. I think a lot of people, organizations own the enablement, which I think is fantastic. I could go off on my thoughts in terms of AI. And I think one of the things that for us is like we're measuring productivity as well as just confidence score and like tying that back into so confidence and productivity when it comes to AI. And so like we are enabling every function across our business to just just feeling comfortable and confident in utilizing the tools in which we have. And then we're tying that back into like what people metrics are we seeing some correlations when it comes to that in terms of business outcomes as well. And so I just want to iterate again, it's like you've got the data there. If you don't understand how you make money, talk to your finance partners and then start to think about, all right, what data do I have from a people perspective and how can I see and measurement? Connor said it before, going back to it and continuously going back to like, what is the ROI? How am I tying these stories back to what data we already have? And so, I just say all that as like right now, I think we're living in what could be the most interesting and impactful time within the people space. When you think about AI, I think it's a workforce discussion more than anything else. And so really thinking about what data analytics do you have right now that can tie to like productivity, enablement, engagement. And so I think that there's a lot of things out there that can help tie back to business outcomes. You just have to make sure that you are fluent in those as well as just being curious. I think I can't say it more, just be curious about all things.
Definitely. What that makes me think of is when HR connects learning, engagement, and retention data to financial outcomes, we're really translating the people impact into business language. Like Jerry's saying, like it's not just about showing activity, it's about showing value creation. And so even in higher ed, we have the context of tying a business goal to what we're trying to impact. It could be student success or operational efficiency. We typically look at reverse engineering the data that we do have that influence that particular piece. And so making sure that we are tracking pre and post training opportunities, looking at what's the reduction in error rates, increasing throughput, faster project completion. It could even be, not in our instances, but higher sales per employee. Those are things that you could already be tracking, and moving beyond the completion rates and focusing on behavioral application and the business impact. One of the things that we really, I think, in partnering with finance to validate a model, working with that team to translate HR metrics into dollar terms can be really helpful. So the cost of turnover, value of increased productivity, cost savings from reduced absenteeism, those kinds of partnerships with the departments can enhance credibility and help make HR insights actionable for those budget and planning conversation. Because at the end of the day, the most powerful insight combines numbers with narrative. Like my team has said, the data shows the ROI, but the story explains the why. And when we can connect an engaged employee to a better experience, in our case, a better student experience, or a trained leader to improve team outcomes, we really do make the human impact visible alongside the financial one.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I agree with you. I wish we could put like those heart emoji, emotions to show that I agree. But so a couple of you mentioned the importance of working with other departments like finance, for example, to be able to explain the link between metrics and ROI, or translating the data into dollars. So my next question is really, well, I would love to ask you if you could talk a little bit more about how can HR and finance collaborate to build a shared language and framework for ROI measurement.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in. I was just having this discussion with our head of finance last week. I've thought throughout my entire career, and I should say I actually started my career in finance and made the pivot to the people side a little bit later on in my career. And I think what that has shown me is a really good progressive partnership between a people and finance team will likely make or break an organization as far as kind of how things get done, how easy it is for employees to work in said organization, how well the organization is prioritizing communications and engagement mixed with how you translate business strategy and financial metrics into digestible language. Like, I think that there's so much shared learning and shared language between those two functions. And I'll be vulnerable. Like, I've worked in organizations where that partnership has just been really bad. And it's made it really difficult to get work done that ultimately drives, efficiency and effectiveness in the org. So, look, I think it's a couple of things. I think, finance teams and people teams need to spend intentional time understanding each other's space. I think oftentimes there is this perception from finance teams that like, oh, the numbers are too technical. Like, is the people team really going to understand? And then you got the people team that's like, oh, the finance team's just way too focused on numbers. They don't understand the gray area and like how we should be prioritizing engagement and storytelling. When in reality, 9 times out of 10, there's just like a total lack of understanding from both sides of, what the two functions can do to really create a beautiful partnership. So I think, first and foremost, it's, for me as a people leader coming into any organization, I'll typically, spend as much time as possible early on with the finance team or finance leader, really ensuring that one, there's an established sense of trust that not only for me as the people leader, but my team kind of equally are fully committed to, as Jerry mentioned earlier, like really understanding the fundamentals of how the business operates from a financial metrics perspective, right? Because I think to be a really, really effective people partner, you've got to be able to speak the shared language of the business, right? It goes back to that whole notion of business leader first. I think secondly, it's really ensuring that the people and finance teams identify the opportunities that are known to be like shared responsibilities, right? So if you think about the impact of a good people finance partnership on workforce planning or on strategic planning, it can be a magical process if those two teams come together to really co-build the desired outcomes. And so I think being able to early on identify where those strong partnership adjacencies are just based on, pragmatism of we both need to be in this to drive better outcomes. So, anyways, I'll let, other panelists chime in here, but yeah, I really think it's the fundamentals of listening to each other, understanding each other's kind of shared functions, and then really diving into what are the true collaboration opportunities and how do we build together versus one building for the other and vice versa.
Love that. Thank you, Connor, so much. Does anybody else would like to chime in to answer this question?
I think Connor nailed it. I mean, the only additional thing I would say, I get it. Some people find numbers really scary. I get that. And I think walking in that vulnerability is also okay. I often tell people to do 2 things. One, sit with your finance partner to understand how we make money. Then secondly, sit on sales calls if you have a sales team. So understand what is compelling in the marketplace, but also going back to the original question, it's gosh, just be curious and vulnerable. Sometimes you're asking a question, which a lot of people have that same question. And so just take up the time to do it. Your finance partner understand, good ones understand that partnership. Connor already said it, that partnership is so key. So the closest, I probably work the most closely, depending on the time of the year, with my CFO. And I think that relationship and that friendship, as well as that partnership, is absolutely paramount. And so he knows that I have his back and we're speaking shared language, but he also knows that I have an understanding of the business. So if I'm asking for something, there is a shared and mutual respect because I have taken the time to make the understanding. And I think both sides can be true. So, but +1 to everything Connor said.
We have great teams, definitely. The other thing that I would add is beyond periodic check-ins, right? Moving from that transactional collaboration, help us calculate this cost, which I know in HR we have a tendency to do, to that strategic partnership. Let's forecast the value of this initiative, right? Thinking specifically about how you're tracking and modeling those initiatives and embedding finance in workforce planning and HR in strategy sessions early. So HR connecting and engaging in budget and forecasting discussions so that we have that seat at the table, and not just to request funding, but to model, right, those components of the people proactively, because there are a lot of conversations that happen in the budget room that if HR is not at the table, we can't help be strategic about. So that's the last thing I would add to the great points that have already been made.
Thank you. And so let's talk a little bit about like in your experience, what are some of the most common mistakes that organizations or companies make when trying to measure the return on their talent investment, and what should we avoid?
So I can jump in. I think if I speak to what I shared earlier, I think Connor also mentioned keeping it simple. One of the biggest mistakes is trying to be too elaborate. And that means with the correlation, potentially causation, we want to make sure that the information that we're sharing is credible. And the data and the numbers must be credible, number one. So make sure that there's data accuracy. But then the second piece of it is that correlation does not mean causation. So while we get excited in our storytelling and tooting our own horn, we have to make very sure that we have a true understanding of the connectivity between our talent management initiatives and the outcomes in the business. And if it's a hypothesis or the view that there might be a connection, say that, but let's not assume that one thing caused the other, because that's also when you lose credibility. And it's so important when we think about with our partners, be it the business leaders or finance partners, that we have that credibility and that true understanding of the data and the numbers and how the work that we do is impactful.
The only thing I would add to that would be, I think so often, and this is true outside of HR too, is the mistakes we make would be like our time frame is too short, right? It's either too short or too long, right? So like we infer insights, and yet your duration might be a month, or it might be a couple weeks. And so I would just give it time to breathe, because I'm in tech, so we like to move fast. We will sometimes change course quite a few times in a given quarter. And so I think sometimes you just have to to really identify the efficacy of a program or an initiative, you have to have some duration of time where you have critical mass of data. And I think so often, particularly in businesses that are high growth, you're always looking at different levers you can pull to see outcomes quickly. And so I would just say, like, fight for the duration, for like giving it a little bit of time to breathe, because I think so often in any type of initiative, we might expect outcomes to be faster than they are. And I think in the people space, behavioral change, transformations take time. And so I would just make sure that you have a mindset in terms of like how long you think that would be, and really like start to set expectations around that.
I love that, Jerry. Some things that also come to my mind are two things that come to my mind are working in silos is a common error. And so HR often calculating ROI in isolation, like we've all said, without finance or operation validations, that really can lead to skepticism or disconnect between what the business numbers are and HR numbers look like. And so just the common partnering earlier to validate any assumptions that are being made, and that shared ownership builds trust and outcomes. And the second really being focusing on proving value instead of improving value. And so the goal of measurement, not just to justify a program's existence or HR's capability, it's to learn, iterate, and improve. And so when measurement can become defensive, learning stops for everyone. And so reframing the ROI as a learning system, what worked, what didn't, what should we do next? So really that process improvement, because the best HR teams use measurement to help shape the future of an organization and guide where to invest next, what problem to solve next, and how to lead better. So I think that, just as my peers have said, how making people strategy inseparable from business strategy is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Collaboration is power, right? I think, and like somebody mentioned earlier, transparency, communication, that is definitely something that will help us move forward. And we have about 2 minutes left, if I'm not mistaken. So I actually have one closing question, and I would love everyone's opinion on this. And the question is, what's one metric every HR leader should be tracking to prove business impact in 2026? Who would like to start?
I'm happy to start. It's interesting because I think we've talked a lot about the metrics are all there, and we have to be very focused on like what is important for us in our stage of growth or momentum or what have you. Look, I think in a world where AI is super prevalent and organizations are taking a larger focus on how do we do more with less, no matter how well the organization is doing. I think it is absolutely critical for us to be highly focused on retention of top performers. And then the necessary correlation between what top performers are doing to actually drive the business strategy forward. I think one of the things that I've seen that organizations do that is a bit of a mistake is they go through all of the work to do the 9 boxes, the performance management infrastructure, the calibrations, and then it just gets stuffed away in a folder until you go through it the next year. And then you go through the whole, process again. And I think one of the biggest misses is, being able to revisit that calibrated data, at a kind of team by team level to really truly understand, like, are the top performers still our top performers? And then with the context of what we deem as top performance, are these folks, are they churning? Are they staying? Are they engaged? So I really do think it's the kind of engagement and management of top performers and being able to actually revisit that regularly versus just once a year.
In your engagement, in case you're curious, most engagement surveys can actually identify performance. So you can cut that data that way. So I just +1 to Connor. I'll take a little bit, very less than 60-second take. +1 to Connor and Pride and Company, because I do think Pride and Company is a driver for engagement, but I do think it's a really hard one to really think about, are they going to stay long term? And so for me, I think we're such a mission oriented company. It is one which we monitor a lot. So Pride and Company, but +1 to what Connor said, because I think we don't spend enough time going back and making sure. But again, just as a quick take, you can find those people. It is anonymous, but you can identify and correlate your data with your performers. So yes, +1.
Thank
I'll
you.
go really quickly on that to plus on both of them. My quick and dirty metric is velocity. So promotion and lateral movement within an organization. It touches on the engagement and the skill set of the team. And ideally, you're moving high performers through the organization so that they are engaged, excited about what they're doing, and providing higher impact in the organization itself.
Thank you. We have 30 seconds left. Janet.
So if I had to pick one, it would be talent activation rate. And so not just how many people we hire, train, or retrain, but how effectively we're unlocking their ability to contribute to organizational goals. And the first question I get from my team is, what does that even mean? And so engagement and enablement and performance potential divided by potential is how we measure that, and working to ensure reliable data points are available. And making sure that employees really just want to do their best work. So that's what I would do. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. And I am sorry to say that we are out of time, but I would like to thank all of our panelists today. Thank you to everybody that joined us on LinkedIn. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day and happy weekend. Bye.
Mm-hmm. Hey Lisa, can you hear me? You're muted. Sorry. Sorry again, Lisa. I think your audio is not connected. We cannot hear you.
Is that better? Yes? Is everyone hearing me now?
We're in business.
Okay. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. Apologies. I'll start really quick since nobody heard anything.
We can hear you now.
You can hear me now, yes? Yes?
Yes.
Great. Sorry, something happened with my phone and it disconnected. So let me start really quick, just saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to the Hacking HR Talent Management and Workforce Strategy Summit. Let's extend a big, warm welcome to our audience who is joining us from around the globe. We're delighted to have you. Let's jump right in since we're a few seconds late. I'd like to welcome our panel of distinguished experts in all things people and talent. It's a pleasure to have you all here. Let's start off by having each of you share a brief introduction of your background, share why you're joining us, where you're joining us from, and a quick snapshot of your impressive backgrounds and what intrigued you about this topic. Let's start at the top. Lindsay.
Hi, nice to meet everybody. My name is Lindsay Harris. I'm the Director of Human Resources for Interstate Equities Corporation. I've been a strategic partner for a little over 20 years now, doing HR for companies as they grow, typically in their growth phase. So I've taken healthcare companies and real estate companies and typically doubled or tripled their size for them and helped them with staff planning, department planning, resource planning. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Great, welcome, Lindsay. Anuj?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Anuj Kathuria. I'm joining from Mumbai, India. After having spent about 22 years in corporate at multiple C levels of HR as well as business strategy, I hung my boots from the corporate ladder and started my own consulting firm called Ascendra in 2022. And it's been 3 years that I manage this firm at a global level. And we do work in space of workforce planning, operating model, organization design, HR transformation, as well as HR digital transformation in the AI economy. I'm very passionate about this topic because this happens to be one of the most critical elements that's on the board's agenda these days, given the fact that we are living in an economy driven by AI. So, this becomes one of the most critical and a topic for which most people are grappling answers for. How do you plan? Looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Great, welcome, Anuj. Malvika.
Hi, everyone. Great to be with you today. I'm Malvika Jetmalani. I'm dialing in from Chicago. I'm the founder of Atvis Group, which is a human capital advisory firm driven by the core belief that to win in the marketplace, businesses must first win in the workplace. And what intrigues me about this topic is exactly what Anuj said. This is a topic that's top of mind for many CEOs and boards. And we are also in the age of capital efficiency, where using every single dollar effectively really, really matters. And companies are trying to do more with less, especially in the age of AI and agentic AI. So we have an additional layer of complexity on top of our already complex workforce planning processes. So I'm glad to be with you today.
Great, thank you, Malvika. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this correctly. Francia?
Hi, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. Francia. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today.
I have been in the HR space for about 20 years as well, like many of you. I am an HR executive. I work for a global language training and coaching organization called Speaks. And really what intrigued me to this topic is I, like Anuj, believe that this is probably one of the most critical practices that any company can do and do well to serve both the people and the business. If you're really not planning your workforce, really strategically thinking about the people that you have on board, the technology that you have, and really pairing it with your strategy, then you're almost planning to fail. So I really love this topic, and just a pleasure to be with you and exchange all of your ideas and thoughts on workforce planning.
Great. Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, and thank you, fellow panelists as well. Big shout out to Hacking HR. The last 3 days have been wonderful, really bringing our international HR community together to really look at these things. I think one of the threads that we can pull on is HR leaders being business leaders, and that's what I'm really excited about. So I'm Jonathan Wilson, about 27 plus years as a organizational development and HR executive. Stemming from my time as an HR officer in the Army to at Booz Allen Hamilton as a senior associate in running businesses, but also with client engagements around human capital, organizational development, change management, and org behavior assignments as well. Transitioned to nonprofit about 10 years ago, actually going on what we call the business side, and actually was an executive director running a local chapter for what we call Blood Cancer United right now, formerly the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. The last 5.5 years, I transitioned back into HR to really bring that lens of frontline leadership, executive leadership, into talent planning, workforce planning, succession planning, and change management as well. So that's what my key fascination is with this topic is, just like Anuj said and everybody on the panel said, this is front of mind of executive leaders across industries. The uncertainty out there, not just in the United States, but internationally, when it comes to governments, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to our workforce and talent, we have to plan differently in the future. And the future for us right now is now, right? So when we go from annual headcount planning, which is very transactional, to really future focused, how do we balance both of those? So I'm eager to talk through all that today.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jonathan. I think, as everyone stated, this has become top of mind for all of us HR leaders, given the economy and just uncertainty, right? I think that if COVID taught us anything, it's that something can come out of right field and completely derail, right? And if you're not prepared with scenarios in anticipation of that, we are the ones who get the biggest hit on that, right? It can be detrimental. So thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a kickoff question. I think we'll keep going clockwise, starting with Lindsay, if that makes sense. Yeah, okay with everyone? Great. Okay, so kickoff question. How do HR leaders use scenarios for planning? The second part of that is maybe share, each of you, what some of those scenarios are. And I think we'll start with the ones that we think that are most important, because there's so many scenarios, right? But what are the ones that we really need to be paying attention to today, given where we are?
Sure. So I think the scenarios that currently we're looking at in our business is the integration of AI, and what does that do to either increase or decrease our headcount planning. And so in some of our departments, it will decrease headcount because it will increase efficiency. And those are just not departments in which we need additional scale. In other departments, it will actually increase our headcount to be able to use that. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is using agentic AI as part of that headcount planning. And really considering what that looks like as a seat almost on that team. And then, who's managing that, who's evaluating that, almost like it is an individual who's on our team, depending upon what we're planning for that to do. So that's the scenario that we're tackling right now. And I think everyone's kind of hit that AI is really the focus. And I think that bringing that into workforce scenarios and headcount planning is what all of us need to be doing right now.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. Anuj.
Very interesting point, Lindsay. Must appreciate that. I have a little different take on that, at least with my experience and the kind of clients I'm working with. And that experience tells me that, see, the workforce of 26 and future, it's not a headcount question. I mean, traditional models of workforce planning, scenario planning are all headcount based. The dynamic and paradigm has changed. It's now a question of cognition. It used to be about how many people. Now it's about how much cognition your enterprise can mobilize, whether it's human, machine, or hybrid. So, because the workforce, as we speak today, is multidimensional. You have physical workforce that's comprises of on-ground people. You have a digital workforce, which includes people who are working remotely or manage things in a different standpoint. And then you have a cognitive workforce, which is your AI augmented decision makers. So the traditional way of talent allocations has kind of died in my understanding. And in my recent projects over the course of last 12 odd months, I have seen scenario number one, use AI as a co-pilot. So keep in mind that 30 to 40% of your tactical and operational work will get automated, if not today, in the next couple of months. Otherwise, you run the risk of becoming redundant. So headcount grows flat, but skill matrix shift massively. Your chief HR officers or your chief people officers reallocate themselves as chief relevance officers from that standpoint. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two, where your AI automation is going to be pretty high with low human adaptation. That's where typically 60 to 70% of transactional work gets automated and rapid job collapse happens in mid-level operations. So the focus over there is cognitive redesign, mental agility, and governance. And then there's a third plan, which is a hybrid plan, which is an AI augmented workforce scenario, which is more of a human renaissance, where we focus with humans to develop the uniquely human capabilities of creativity, empathy, co-creation, sense making. Your head counts will shrink, but your value per head doubles. And the focus there is more on cognitive teaming and creative training. So yeah, these kind of scenarios are kind of playing out, and I've played with my clients to talk about. And it kind of is working out in many ways, because today we are not talking about FTs, we're talking more about cognitive equivalence. And unfortunately, in today's time and space, we don't have a set answer in terms of what needs to be the right ratio between human and AI. What's the labor ratio going to be? Unless you decide that equation, you will never be able to do headcount planning in even 50% with 50% accuracy. So getting that equation right is what the focus has been, at least with the companies that I have spoken with and I'm offering my services to. At first, figure out the level of automation, the level of maturity canvas in your industry area, in your country, in your region, and then look at these possible scenarios and then look at it. So yeah, that's what I've been looking at.
Great. Thank you. And there's Malvika. No, Francis. Sorry. Francia, are you there? No? Okay. We'll go to you, Malvika.
Yeah, I think she might be having
so.
connectivity issues.
Yeah.
So first of all, totally agree with Anuj that a lot of workforce planning is limited to headcount planning. In fact, the Gartner 2025 CHRO priority report found that 66% of HR leaders say that their workforce planning is limited to headcount planning, which means they're focused on kind of immediate staffing needs like hiring, layoffs, budget allocation. And that is, of course, an important part of this. But the way I think about it is we should be thinking about capability and capacity, and how do we align that with our strategy over the next 12 to 36 months. And when we talk about capability and capacity, of course, we're talking about exactly what Lindsay and Anuj said, which is thinking about the digital labor capacity, or AI agents. So we've all seen news of various CEOs. I think it started with Shopify, and then Dropbox and others joined, where they're saying, don't ask for additional headcount unless you can prove that AI cannot carry out the responsibilities and the tasks for which you want to bring an FTE in. I am starting to hear more and more of those types of mandates from CEOs and CFOs and other executives. So they're really asking their teams to push the envelope. And I'm starting to see more kind of blank slate org design. So before we even move into workforce planning, asking ourselves, how would we structure our team, our operating model, our ways of working if we were starting from scratch? So not focusing on the people in the boxes, but really focusing on the jobs to be done, and then designing the org from there with both human and digital labor. And this is what I'm seeing and hearing is very consistent with what Microsoft has found as well. Earlier this year, they released a report called Work Trend Index, the year of the frontier firm. I would encourage everyone to check it out if you haven't done so yet. And in it, they talk about this concept of we are moving toward the work chart instead of the org chart, which was the past. An org chart is traditionally based on hierarchies and boxes and wires, right? And they talk about the work chart being centered around the jobs to be done and the responsibilities that need to be carried out in an organization in order to move the business outcomes forward. So they compare this to the idea of the way that a movie is made. So when you want to make a movie, you bring together a team of experts in their various domains, and you work on the project together, and then the team disbands once the movie is made. And so they compare this to movie production because they think that we are moving in a direction where teams are going to start to be more outcome-based and project-based rather than being centered around hierarchies and titles. And so I think that is an interesting layer that we need to be aware of as we approach workforce planning. And that is precisely why we need scenarios. We need obviously our baseline scenarios and our boom scenarios and our slowdown scenarios, much like your finance team will have scenarios in their planning, but also scenarios let you sort of pre-decide whether you build, buy, borrow, bought, and what options trigger them as signals change. We know that 81% of leaders are expecting AI agents to be integrated into company strategy in the next 12 to 18 months. And so planning for that kind of joint human agent capacity is now table stakes when it comes to workforce planning.
Great. Thank you, Malvika. Francia, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'm back.
You're back. Okay. We'll go backwards, and then Jonathan, we're jumping over to you.
Okay.
Francia, go ahead.
Yeah, so when we think about workforce planning and particularly scenario planning, I share some of Malvika's thoughts. Right now, within the age of AI, and everybody's talking about it, we can't ignore it. One of the things that we have to really think through is the human capability to deal with this new period. Workforce planning really helps us to get ahead of, to kind of be futurists and think through what's coming. Are we really prepared? It allows us to really ask the critical questions and really be visionary and kind of think, does our organization have the capability, the readiness, and what should we do in advance of that? Scenario planning in particular, we're really challenging our leaders and our workforce to think through okay, if scenario A happens, how are we ready? If scenario B happens, how are we ready? So that we're not really caught, without some kind of plan, some kind of idea for how to execute for the business. There are several scenarios which we still win because we've thought through multiple things that could happen when we're planning.
Yeah, and I'll pull on that thread a little bit too, and some things that Malvika and Anuj said that really we need to pull on is when you look at scenario planning, you have to account for your annual, like how do you go from annual headcount planning, which is here are my commitments for the next year, to what do I actually have to plan for that's unpredictable coming in? Like example in the nonprofit space to really go tactical in this, right? It's do we have a plan, or 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan to increase revenue and relationships into an organization? Well, what happens in a nonprofit space if we're solely focused on our donor base, if a wildfire or hurricane happens or something, and our donor base shifts to supporting that natural disaster versus our mission? Part of that is really finding those scenarios that you can plan for, doing predictive analysis, and looking at what Anuj calls your workforce mix, right? And Francia, what you just said too, the Bill Barrow bot, and Malvika, you said it as well, that workforce mix might shift quarterly, not just from the annual standpoint. So we need to shift from a very transactional annual process to really looking at this as, here's what we need for the next 3 to 5 years. This is how we can measure it quarterly and have the agility to shift when needed. Really going back into a McKinsey report that came out earlier this year is how do we treat talent as the same rigor as financial capital, right? So if we really go through that and we really look at that and we say, okay, we need this skills-based thing or the skills-based approach to this market, which is different than this market, we need to create a scenario based upon that.
Yeah, I agree. Great points from everyone. I have a whole page of notes. I think one of the things that I want to touch on is, Jonathan, what you were saying is that, we need to develop plans for the most likely scenarios, right? This is if everything goes according to whatever that plan is, right? But then we have to also create those directional plans, right? And how are we going to adjust to meet those alternative scenarios that might occur? Which is a whole another set of responsibilities for HR, and where we really sit at the center of it, because that is organizational change, right? If one of those scenarios happens, we immediately go into a plan of organizational change and comms, and what does that all look like? So I think that this workforce planning is definitely is more multifaceted, has more components than it ever has before, right? Because it used to be the CFO just says, you have 50 headcount with nothing behind it, right? No consideration of where they are or any of that, right? And then we kind of go back and unravel it. But it has definitely become, there's a lot more components to workforce planning now, which is so interesting to me.
I think, Lisa, the question itself has changed now. It's not about headcount planning anymore. It's about what is the intelligence mix you have, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so and we call it workforce simulation or workforce plan. That's actually become an output of what your business operating model is. And like Malvika was saying, we have to look at from a clean slate standpoint and think about the 4 W's actually. That, the nature of work, a 45, 48-hour container, the very essence of that has changed over the last 2 decades and more so in the last 5 years. So those 4 W's, like you rightly said, the plan needs to have work, workforce, workplace, and work value. So starting from what parts of work can be or should be automated or needs to be given this AI economy, what needs to be the workforce intelligence mix, how does your culture, collaboration, and control evolve with these two, and where does the value creation migrate? unless those critical questions are answered, you truly cannot even commence workforce scenario planning or workforce planning. These basic pillars have to be first erected, and then we go to the next stage.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to start with some personalized questions, and I'm going to kind of mix up the flow here and jump around a little bit. But I'm going to start with you, Francia. What, in your opinion, what should every organization be doing? What should every organization be doing iterative workforce planning, and what is the biggest strategic and operational advantage that it gives the company?
Yeah, I think every organization should be looking at the skill set of their people. Right now, honestly, I think that is the biggest leverage that any organization has. You can't really underplay the skill set of the people. I don't want to beat the AI horse to death, but we keep talking about AI. You hear it everywhere. And one of the things that many organizations are looking at right now is, again, the human machine mix. But at the end of the day, we're still human, and you have to think, how is our workforce prepared to use and incorporate AI so that we can be faster, we can be more efficient, we can get to our goals in a better way? So really it is, what is our capability? How are we going to train? How are we going to develop our organization to really achieve our goals? That for me is one of the biggest focuses that we have to think through, not just how many people or where they sit or what they're doing, but what is their capability in order to achieve the goals of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that everyone's touched on is, adoption of AI, right? And CEOs that are coming and saying, that job can be done by AI. It's the first thing that I say, okay, thank you very much for your opinion. But I'll take it from here. But, I do agree that, yes, that is a question we have to ask ourselves. But I don't want someone to come to me and say, this job can be done by AI. Show me the data. Have you validated that, right? Because if I go and let people go because you just came in here and said, yep, AI can do it without validating it, and you don't have data to show me to back that up, I'm not going to do that, right? That would be irresponsible of us to do that, right? And we all know who that's going to come back to if it blows up, right? So I really think that we as HR practitioners need to be really sure that we're managing those requests and demands for adopting AI in place of people, right? I don't want people coming to me without data to support it. That's not okay, because that'll definitely unravel for all of us. Okay, so Jonathan, what is the process to plan workforce planning and scenarios in businesses, and how do you manage those scenarios across different teams? This is something that I've been grappling with a little bit because it's different from team to team.
Yeah, it is different from team to team depending on, and there's also a difference between team to team and how teams interact as well, or integrate as well. I think if you take the basis of looking at your organization capabilities first and foremost, and really figuring out first organization strategy. What are you trying to achieve first? As a business leader, HR leaders need to look at it from that perspective. From that, we have certain capabilities that we need to define, identify what our current capabilities are and what potential future capabilities. That then goes into skills. And I love how we're transitioning a lot of our language and support around the skills first approach in organizations, because then you can really dive into what skills are within what teams. At that point, you can start looking at duplication of efforts. You can start segmenting roles. You can start looking at these roles might be misaligned with our strategy because of AI, right? And how do we plan for that? Some organizations right now that are in the news, you can read through, they're combating AI with laying off and doing a lot of RIFs for roles that they think our AI is going to take over. That said, inside those organizations, we really need to see how that's planning. Is that a knee-jerk reaction, as we call it, or is that something that strategically we've been planning for the last year? So only people in the organization can see it. That's where HR executives as business leaders really lean in to really look at how are we planning for teams and how we're planning for teams. So I always say start with capabilities first. Don't think about talent just yet, right? Think capabilities, roles, segment roles, look at skills, and then overlay talent. And that's when succession planning comes in and development comes in and hiring practices. All that relays into our achievement of business results then. So that's hard because it's hard to separate the person from the role, but that's a critical part that we really need to do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, succession planning has definitely become the forefront of what we're doing. The exact points that you're talking about, Jonathan. We need to plan for those different scenarios when things change, right? And capabilities change and people outgrow roles, right? And based on the outcomes that the company's looking for, right? Okay, so Anuj, what do you think is the most under-examined part of workforce planning? I know we touched on this a little bit, but if you could deep dive on that with us.
That's $1 billion question. There are so many answers to that.
Yes.
And
You're welcome.
I raised my hand and I confess I've been guilty of many of those crimes over the piece of my career. I've done multiple of those issues. So, but if you look at it in today's time, I think when I speak to boards and CEOs, two things which truly are like deal breakers are the FOMO effect without realizing the why. You have an operating model, you have a specific maturity canvas in different functions of your business. You have a plan. Not every business is in the growth stage. Not everybody is in the maturity stage, and not everybody is a different standpoint. Just because my competitor is doing certain things, I do that, and then try and rejig my entire operating model, my workforce plan, my entire thing. That's is happening a lot. Number two, I think following the run and treating it as a number exercise. It never was a number exercise. It always been has an exercise about skills, the right mix. Just the fact only is now we have transitioned from that to right intelligence. So, and it's been there the last 2.5, 3 years in mature organizations. There are organizations who are in the process and there are organizations who are still laggards. One of the elements also is, it's not going to impact my organization because I'm in the brick and mortar business. So nothing will happen. And after 4 months, you get to know, really, this can also happen in my field. It can also happen in my industry. I think these two are the biggest bloopers I have seen over the course of the last 3 years at least.
Yeah.
And then people jump in frenzy. Something has happened. Come and save us. Pull out a rabbit. I just need saving. I need a saving grace. I need a Hail Mary. Give me that one pass. Let me get through this. We've seen that frenzy happen in the market. And I think that's going to continue because of one, our own understanding of the ecosystem that we are operating in. Number two, they say that half knowledge is dangerous. And that's a very common element in today's standpoint. We hear things and we start believing them without understanding what really it is. Now, it's a surprising fact, a fun fact for the panel here and the audience. An organization conducted a survey for over 7 million people across the globe. And this was done for people in the age group of 35 to 55. For 99.93% of those people, AI is only ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, Perplexity, Beautiful.ai and Gamma.ai. That's the soul and soul of AI. They don't know anything beyond this. So you can think about it, where this problem stems from, that half knowledge is dangerous. So I think understanding the why, your own context, and then not just copy pasting what others are doing. One needs to find, this is a battle that everybody needs to find their own strength within themselves.
Yeah. Excellent points.
Yeah.
Lindsay, and I'm particularly giving you this question because you started off with, the adoption of AI and how do we do that? So how has workforce planning and scenario planning changed with the adoption of AI?
I mean, I think adoption is really development. And so anytime you're talking about your workforce, you need to be thinking about how you're investing in them and in developing them. I think having experience growing companies and with startups, the adoption and the integration of AI as you scale isn't so foreign, right? We've always had to think about scenarios as they're happening. We are the car pulling out on the track as the wheels are being screwed on. Like, that is our environment. And so we've always tapped into whether it was like a third party who's going to supplement that as you grow, or Malvika talked about org design versus work design. When you're in a growth phase, it's all work design, right? You don't have that many people to pick up those things. And so the adoption of AI for us has always been very natural. It's just allowed us to, whether it's replace a headcount or replace a third party or use that tool differently. Sometimes it is a third party, right? It's a different software you're bringing in, but it's bringing all those things together. And we have always been in an environment where we're constantly saying, what happens next? If this deal closes, if that capital comes in, if this next thing happens, like, how do we fill that until you do get to spread out again? So I think it's really about being agile and being nimble, which is something those of you who have worked in startup environments or have been in growth environments, you can bring that knowledge to now some of these other organizations and industries that haven't had that experience, right? Maybe they haven't had those big booms of growth, or they're not in the there's 3 of us in a hacker house and now there's 50 of us in an office somewhere in Palo Alto, right? It's where they're used to having to kind of figure that out. But that experience and that agility is what all of our companies need now. And as HR professionals and as senior executives at that table with your CEO and with your CFO, you have to be talking about the agility. It's really hard to sit there now and say, like, this is our 3-year plan. This is our 5-year plan. This is what it's going to look like. You have no idea, right? Like, unless you're really good at the crystal ball thing, you really don't know yet. And you have to be planning ahead. But really, it's planning ahead with pulling all of those levers. And I think headcount planning, which everybody's kind of talked about, is not this number anymore. It's helping your senior team, right? Your CEO, your CFO, whomever else, understand that headcount is redefined by software, by tools, by agentic AI, by, all of those different things. And it's bringing all of that together and being able to create a culture that is adapt to change. And so those of you on this audience and on this panel who have done a lot of change design for organizations, big and small, change is often hard. But I think that it's getting our teams comfortable with constant change, so the change doesn't actually feel like change. And how do you package that? Because that's where you're going to get adoption. That's what the development and the investment back into your team is so the culture and the feeling of change becomes their stability. And that's how you're going to continue to increase performance. That's how you're going to propel that momentum further for not only just your org, but the team within your org. Because that is our obligation as HR professionals, is to keep developing that team. That's what pushes the orgs together. That's what gets you forward and gets better ROI or gets the better investment or whatever it is that is the goal for the firm that you're working with.
Yeah, I agree, Lindsay. One of the things that you touched on was that the importance of comfortable with constant change, right? And that is, I've been tackling that with some of my clients and making sure that they have a really, really robust full cycle comms plan, right? And I've hired that role more than engineering in the last 6 months for companies, because if you don't have if you don't have somebody leading that constant change, is basically a revolving door of people leaving, right? And that's a bad thing. One of the things that we didn't talk about that I think is really important is how important the relationship is between HR and finance now, right? I think I've always had that, and I've always been, I've had criticism over the years of, why are you so close with the CFO? I manage the largest line item on the balance sheet, so I feel like I should be, right? But I've always approached workforce planning in my career, and like I said, I've had criticism in the way that I do it. But I think it was Malvika or Jonathan, you pointed out that the importance, we were talking about teams, right? And so if I'll just use engineering and product as an example, right? And that they overlap, right? Obviously, right? Product says this is what we're going to build, and engineering goes, nope, and this is why, right? So for me, in that particular scenario, I meet with them individually at the beginning of budget planning, and then I meet with them together. And I go to the product roadmap, meetings and the strategy sessions. I go to the engineering, one-on-ones and the meetings and all of that, so that I know what's going on with them, so that I act as kind of a mediator in the conversation of what do we need? This is where we're going. This is what we're building. Now, how do we get there, right? And who do we need, right? That has always been the way I've approached it. It is, I think, very relevant now, but at the time, I was definitely looked at sideways. And then I go back to the CFO and say, okay, this is what we need for product and engineering, right? And I've validated it, right? It's not just my opinion, right? But I validated it by having those meetings. And I think I'm trying to remember who mentioned that the importance of us being tied to the business, right? Which so often we've just kind of been in this corner, right? Of do you, right? And don't worry about the rest of it. We've got that figured out. And that is not the case anymore, right? We need to be at the center of what's happening and at the outcomes and the goals and the mission of the company we have to be involved in that, because we can't do effective workforce planning. It's dynamic right now. It never used to be, right? It's very stagnant. You said it once a year, stick to it. Don't talk to me about it, right? Until next year. That's not the case anymore, right? It has to be collaborative with HR and finance and business leaders and, constantly aligned with goals and outcomes, right? And then trade-offs as well. Okay, I think we're coming up on time. I haven't looked, but let me see. Have I gotten the notice to stop? Yes. It's hard to believe that 40 minutes went by. I think we probably could talk for hours, but I want to thank you all for a really great conversation. Thank you to our audience for making the space and joining us today. We're going to conclude with a question for everyone. We'll go around. We'll start with Lindsay and go clockwise. But we've talked about a lot of things today, but if you could share one piece of advice for people, HR, talent practitioners, who are looking to implement workforce planning in their companies, because there's lots of companies that haven't done this, right? What would that piece of advice be for them?
If they were going to this is the first time they're doing workforce planning?
They don't have it. What would you say is a really critical piece of advice if you're kicking that off?
I think if this is the first time you're talking about workforce planning for your org, you need to figure out with the senior team how to tie what the goal of the organization is to the departments that are established. And then you can figure out how to support those departments. But the first thing is the senior team has to agree upon who's in the organization and where that organization is going. That's step one. And then figuring out how to support that is step two.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. Anuj?
Well, I would say headcount is history. Head worth is the future. You and I and nobody can plan for jobs that don't exist today or those that will not exist. But focus on designing for intelligence. Focus on work, workplace, work culture, work value. And things will fall in place.
Thank you, Anuj. Francia.
I would say just plan and get creative. Think about what you think is going to come, what's not going to come. Make sure your people are prepared. Look at your goals, tie your people to goals, and you will get to some scenarios that will help you propel your business throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. Malvika.
I know we're out of time, so I'll make this quick. I think start with the goals of the business. I think sometimes we can get caught in our little HR silos. So start with what the business is trying to accomplish, decouple the work from the roles, and focus on what work needs to get done, and then think about the right human agent mix to get that work done.
Yeah, and I'll quickly add on just integrating it to business planning. That's the most important part of this, getting peer buy-in on integrating this in the business.
That was mine as well. Make sure you're aligned to the overall business outcome strategy. Great. Thank you all so much. Good to see you all, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next panel. And I believe this is our last panel for the day. My name is Bricia Ceja. I'm going to be your moderator for this conversation. This is the second panel that I moderate today. I did have a couple of connection issues earlier, so hopefully everything will be great during this conversation. So this conversation is all about planning talent strategy across functions. And this is a topic that I love because it's all about being hands-on, right? So we all know that talent strategy is not something that human resources that we do alone. It is influenced by business goals, financial constraints, operational realities. So today we'll explore how HR can act as a connector, making sure talent decisions drive organizational impact, not just compliance. So before we dive in, I would like to ask our panelists to join me. Hello, welcome. Before I start with all of my questions, because I do have a lot, I want to ask all of you to take maybe 1 minute and tell us a little bit about yourself so our audience can get to know you. So why don't we start with you, Amy, and then Bridget, I think I'm saying that correctly, and then Nicole, and then Abigail.
Fantastic. Thank you, Breza. Kia ora, everyone. Ko Amy Johnston tōku ingoa, no Aotearoa Ahau. My name is Amy Johnston. I am from Christchurch, New Zealand. So as always in New Zealand, we introduce ourselves in Māori first, which is the language of our Indigenous people here. So I'd just like to say thanks for having me. I'm the head of people and capability at Orion, which is our electricity distribution company for Central Canterbury.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. I'm Bridget. I'm based in South Africa, Johannesburg. I'm the Chief People Officer at the Courier Guy. It's exciting to just see the diversity in thinking during this summit. I am looking forward to a rich conversation today, very much one that blends strategy with action and just leaves us with some practical steps to take back to our organizations. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole. I'm based out of Guernsey, the Channel Islands. Those are islands between the UK and France. I currently lead an international people transformation team across 50 countries. And on the side, I also help organizations with a lot of moving forward into the direction of the future. So excited to be here and share knowledge and learn a lot as well, actually.
Hi everyone, my name is Abigail Chilule. I am based in Nairobi, Kenya. I am HR by profession, specialized in global talent acquisition, HR systems, and employee experience. I'm really excited to be here, to be able to learn and share as well as much as I can.
Thank you all so much. What an amazing panel. Okay, I'm already excited about this. Okay, so let's get into our topic for today and the reason why we're all here. I do have a few questions. So maybe what I will do is I will start with a round. So one question for each person, and then after we go through that round, I'll just I'll ask another set of questions, and you all can answer, as you feel called to do so. So my first question, Amy, this is for you.
Sure.
Speaking about a talent gap, what single talent gap across functions keep you up at night and why?
Oh, I think that's a great question. For me, I wouldn't, we're really focused on skills right now. So one of the biggest skills, I think, or skills gap that keeps me up at night and thinking about how we're going to curate and create that with the organization is really adaptability. It's very much those wobble skills that are going to be at the fore as we deal with increasing levels of change, particularly with AI and agentic AI coming into our businesses and changing the way in which we work. Our people are going to be needing to be more and more adaptable. So that's probably the one biggest shift that I think keeps me up at night.
Yes, no, adaptability is a big deal, especially because we know that people, some people maybe change is difficult, right? Just overall. So yes, I agree with that. So let's see, Nicole, this question is for you. Which single metric best signals a looming cross-functional talent crisis in your view?
So I think it's a lot about kind of the time to value, especially we talk about the cross-functional initiatives, so where we work with other people and other teams. I think it's often difficult. One team may already know around what's the ideation of this project, but actually the other teams might not actually understand or know around the measurable impact of that project, right? So I think if a project then takes longer than expected, it might never actually reach those measurable outcomes. So I think it's all around kind of collaboration, alignment, and those capability gaps that really are causes, and that especially now we all have to really look at, okay, how can we actually fill those gaps? And a lot is around the skill sets, but also helping people to get there and helping them to understand what metrics are needed. And that is a data-driven world now, and you can't do anything without numbers. And that's also a huge, I think, learning lesson for many among us.
Yeah. We were talking in the previous panel that I moderated earlier today, we talked about metrics, right? And how people are scared of numbers, right? Many of us, maybe, we see numbers and charts and we're like, I don't know about that. I don't know what to do with all of this information. But like Amy was saying, like adaptability, right? And how do we How do we support our team members to adapt and learn the skills needed? So yes, I agree with that. Thank you so much, Nicole. Abigail, I have a question for you. What are some common causes of failure in cross-functional talent programs in your experience?
Yeah, that's really good. So maybe the main common or the main cause of failure would be quick implementation of a program before we are able to align the solution with the exact problem. Maybe just even because we have internalized or integrated a lot of AI tools within our own recruitment processes, if I can be able to mention that, is we fail to be able to really identify. Case in point, we get quite excited about a new tool that we are able to implement. We've been able to get a new tool in regards to reducing the time to hire, and the piloting begins and all. And the finance team now gets in the mix and is not able to understand in regards to what's the return of investment of this particular tool in this process or in this operation. And then comes in the operation department in regards to they find that probably the workload is becoming harder and longer than they had already expected, and then the program that was expected to be able to run as for a whole year fails even before it really catches ground. So I think it's more of quick implementation of new systems and new programs within our operations before we are able just to align it exactly with the problem and what exactly we are solving. So I think what we have also from the experience that we've had and the failures that we've already encountered, we've been able to counteract in regards to these failures and taken seriously auditing and tracking ourselves in regards to exactly finding what the problem is before we jump into new solutions and new systems. We tend to reason downwards rather than reason upwards from the first principles, that is in regards to what exactly is the problem, what exactly are we trying to fix, what's exactly the broken process within the operation. Is it finding the right candidates? Is it placing the candidate on time? And then being able to understand who exactly is this tool or this system going to impact, apart from the person who is going to use this particular program, the particular system, who exactly is it going to impact, and where exactly is it going to solve that? Where is exactly now finding the overlap, finding the problem, and that is the exact thing that we tend to now be able to work on in regards to before we implement a new program or introduce a new system. And then now being able to really work together with the other functions, with the other departments in co-designing these systems, co-designing these structures that are to be put in place. That is coming in with the finance, helping us out in regards to before even implementation. We've been able now to really sit down and talk with the finance team in regards to what exactly the return of investment will be in regards to this system that we are introducing. Working together with the IT department in regards to how best we can be able to integrate this new system that we want to, or this new tool within our own workflow, the existing workflow, and even working as well with the hands-on people in the operation department to be able to understand, for them to be able to design the workflow that really resonates with them and resonates with their day-to-day activities. And you find that with all this, the tools that we've been able to implement after our proper problem audit, it has turned out really quite successful than the prior ones that we were really just excited and jumping into because maybe we have not been able to really do the back end work. And it has helped us with a lot of implementation of proper programs or proper systems that really solve the problem that we are facing within our own operations.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely solve the root cause, not the problem, right? So totally agree. That's actually something that was drilled into me when I worked in manufacturing. It's like find the root cause of the problem, not like do not solve the problem. Alrighty, so I would like to take maybe a little bit of a step back, and I would love to get your opinion based on everybody's experience when it comes to talent strategy. How do you make sure that your strategy isn't just an HR document, right? Because we make it look great in document, but then making it like making sure that all of the other departments, operations, finance, what have you, leadership, see it as their own. It's different. So in your experience, and I open this question for all of the panelists, in your experience, how do you make sure that your strategy isn't just an HR document, but something that all of the departments see as their own?
I'll jump in first. Within my experience, it's really about co-creation. So anything done to someone is not going to net the best results. So really having that tie to overall business strategy, to the department's business plan and what they're seeking to achieve, the objectives they're trying to get after. And really helping them bring that to life. So after tying to business strategy and co-creation, it's really about what are the metrics that are driving you, what are you checking and adjusting, and how are you bringing that to life on a day-to-day basis. Metrics and governance has always been something that's that's helped me. If you have a number you can drive towards and get other people after, then that will very much help traction.
I love that. That's a great strategy. Anybody else would like to add anything to Amy's answer? Yes, Abigail?
Yeah. So I do agree with Amy as well. In regards to taking ownership on the talent strategies that are being implemented, it's really more of inclusion, including all the functions, at least having regular meetings, regular meetings to be able just to have our conversations with the different heads in this specific fields, in this specific functions, in this specific department, so that we can be able to have a one answer or be able to just answer one big question. And you find that instead of even maybe answering instead of having questions in regards to maybe why are the turnovers quite high, or why are we having turnovers in this particular section, maybe in the finance department, we can be able to find or ask in regards to what are the probably early signs that we should be able to tame and work on, so that we can be able to mitigate any turnovers that will be coming in the future. And once everyone is able to come in and have a common understanding and a common plan on how to go about the strategy that would work best for the whole company as a whole, and will definitely impact their own functions in their own departments, you tend to find that at the end of it all, we can be able to have a shared ownership, because the whole result of the discussion, because you've been able to have a similar question and have a similar answer, it definitely impacts everyone the same in a similar level, and the the difference is really minimal than having different success metrics for the different functions. So everyone takes in as much as possible the ownership, and as well the surfaces of issues are identified early, and as well it kind of just builds trust within the whole ecosystem of the company.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, and we know that also when it comes to implementing a strategy, HR usually has, faces a barrier of budget constraints, right? We're always also worried about budgets. So how should talent strategy adapt when budgets are tight, but transformation must continue across functions? Who would like to jump on this?
Yeah, if I can. This is what I'm countering every day, actually. What I think is really important, that you shift to very high impact, very low cost approaches. So prioritize role design, for example, look at internal mobility. There's so many skills that your team members and teams have that you're not even aware of. So that's really the most important thing, especially right now. There will be, for example, some really great AI experts already in your company that have self-learned and self-taught. That's really what one should look at. Focus on kind of learning sprints where you cross-functionally learn from each other, and also focus on kind of pilot. Right, so small pilots. So what can you actually move forward with? And I would also focus a lot on partnerships, and that could also be with other companies that are actually, that might be actually your competitor, where you can actually learn from. But there's also a lot of other maybe partners that you're working from. So I think all of these really help create an environment where you can still move forward from a people transformation perspective. You don't have to stagnate. There's literally no reason, even if you don't have a zero budget, you can always move forward. So that's kind of where I come from.
Okay, Nicole, let me tell you something. I hear you speak and I'm like getting motivated. So thank you so much for sharing. I love, what you mentioned about the team, your team members having skills that you might not even know of, right? Like, I don't know, maybe do like an skills inventory or something like this, but that is so true. So thank you so much for bringing it up. Now, I know that, for example, Amy, you mentioned that co-creation of a talent strategy is important. So, and again, this question is for all panelists. How do you as HR facilitate those partnerships or communication or collaborations between HR and other functions, especially when it comes to planning workforce needs and budgets and future skills? And if you have any examples or experiences that you would like to share, please feel free to do so.
Absolutely. In that co-creation space is really about, your talent strategy comes out of the organization's business plan, what the organization is chasing, what the organization's priorities are, and then how does that cascade down into the business and those functional business plans and what they're driving after. It's when you embed the conversation into that business planning process at that point in time, and then she can adjust throughout the course of the year, you're going to find that you have far more traction than if you do it as a standalone process. Your people leaders should feel like the talent strategy is their strategy. It shouldn't be, a HR book that's gathering dust on a shelf. It's live. It's changes constantly. It is, a living, breathing thing that you need to feed and look after. So.
Yeah, I love that. The talent strategy is the strategy. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yes, like I think sometimes we put a lot of emphasis on like making the document look pretty and like looking nice and making it detailed. But like you mentioned, it's a live document, and we would need to be updating it and making it and adjusting it depending on the priorities of the organization. So thank you, Amy, for mentioning that. Anybody else would like to add anything before we move on to our next question on how to facilitate collaboration with other functions?
So I want to kind of share a use case that we work with a lot. Is actually all of us have our full-time roles, but part of the full-time roles, and this is really important, so part of my job description is actually to be redeployed elsewhere, right? So if another team requires my help, there is an actual skill sharing agreement that we have that I actually, for so much percentage of my role, I will actually go and help another team. As long as that's written, or as long as that's part of your culture and the values and behaviors you drive, this is really quite worthwhile, and it's a lot of fun as well, and it's a lot of learning from each other's skills. It's sometimes difficult to do because we're a remote company, but actually it's an interesting aspect, because I think many people think, okay, this is what I do, this is how I do it, but where the world is going to go, actually everybody will have to jump into other types of work, and it still will be related, but we all have to learn other parts. So I think with kind of a skill sharing type of agreement, or whatever you do it, whatever percentage you can help somebody, I think that's a really great idea. And that also actually, Brice, it's really quite motivating, because that keeps a role less boring, because you constantly jump.
I'd just jump in there and follow up on that, Nicole. I completely agree. In a skills-first environment, that role design is so incredibly important, and including in the role design of people leadership, that this work is actually part of the leader's role. This is part of what they do. This is part of what they're expected to do. To really help drive that traction and that mobility. But I absolutely love that idea of adding in the role design to help others out and to utilize your unique skills elsewhere. It's absolutely awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you both for jumping in here. So let's talk a little bit about, and I feel that I'm moving really fast, but we only have 40 minutes in total, and I could go on and on about this topic. But let's talk a little bit about metrics. I would love to know, and I'm sure our audience would love to know, how are you using data and analytics to inform cross-functional talent decisions? Like, for example, I don't know, connecting headcount planning with productivity data, or anything like that. Who would like to start?
I can be able to start. In regards to data, I believe that data really does tell the story and helps us as well with formulating the future steps and the future processes that we should be able to go about our operations. Case in point, we can be able to, from our past, you can be able to gauge from maybe within a month or quarterly as well. Quarterly would be ideal on the processes of the job post that you've been able to do, the specific grounds that you have been able to post up your jobs, and what the traction is from these different job boards, and is it making sense in the financial sense for us to be able to get to continue using this particular job board that we either use singularly or most of the time to be able to share our jobs, and how as well is the quality of the candidates we are getting from this particular job board. So that as well helps us with understanding if it is an investment for us to be able to continue to pursue, or is it an investment for us to be able to cut short, or how best are we able to integrate it even within with maybe the systems already within our own our internal systems. That is in regards maybe are the job boards working better, or are the referrals working better? And that is as well comes down to the retainability percentage of the candidates that we've been able to get. Are they is the retention high from the applications that are done out there, or as well is it from the referees that we have been able to, the referrals that we've been able to get from already existing successful candidates? And I believe that with the data as well from that, it will help us in better planning, in better structure, in better planning for the next section that is maybe the second quarter or even the fourth quarter. And as well, even at this particular time where we are in the quarter 4, it helps us to be able to analyze better in regards to, is it are the investments that we were able to do this year, are they investments that would be able to reuse them next year? Are they structures that we are able to cut them short for this year, or how best are we able as well to even utilize? Because you find that yes, the resources are really are available to us in regards to maybe the recruiters, or as well even the operations and the compliance department, but we tend not to be able to really maximize on the potential of those particular systems, such as maybe even just the CRMs that we can have. We can be able to find that with the CRMs, are they AI enabled? Are they AI enabled to its capacity, to its full capacity? And how best are we able just to be able to maximize on that, or should be able to look for external sources and external resources as well? So with the data, it definitely helps us align ourselves better with the investments to be able to be used, or are they to be cut short? It just definitely tells a story.
Thank you. Yeah. And what's not measured cannot be improved, right? So I love what you said. It helps you tell a story as well. Anybody else would like to jump on in here, talk about a little bit about how you're using data? Or I can move on to my next question. Don't worry, I got a lot of questions. So AI. AI is a really hot topic right now. So I'm interested to know, how does AI change the skills that you prioritize across functions? Like, which roles which roles should be reskilled first? Like, how do you come up with those priorities?
I think it's, that's very much a question from an organizational perspective of how, as an organization, you're planning on utilizing AI. I think there's some no regrets actions around digital literacy, around adaptability and innovation, around change, to really help prepare organizations as a whole for what's coming. When it comes to individual role design, that's very much about, as you're going through that workforce planning process and you're looking at, okay, well, are we going to buy this talent? Are we going to reskill this talent? How we're moving through is, what can we automate? And how does that change our skills matrix on the back end? So for many roles, that will look like roles becoming perhaps less entry skill roles, those being automated, and then the questions become for organizations, how do we develop skills or develop that more senior level of skill set if we are automating those entry points that we expect when we talk about experience. So I think there's a lot to unpack there in AI, but it's definitely an interesting challenge.
Yes, definitely. I think we're all in the same boat, in automation, like looking at what processes to automate. It's a great start. So I love that you bring that up. Thank you for that and a great reminder. Anybody else? I know we have 5 minutes left only, so I want to make sure that I get everybody's perspective here.
I'll be able to add on in regards to AI because I think we've been able to really use its tools to its capacity in regards to specifically as well in recruitment and as well in developing up reports and all. And I want to, I believe we all agree that the main purpose of AI is just to be able to take over the repetitive task, the role-based, the data-heavy tasks that we tend we tend not to really like or tend to have a boredom doing them over and over again. And our main essentials as humans is to be able just to maximize on the idea of creativity, of the relationships that we tend to have after the system has already done its work. And in this particular in our organization, we've been able to maximize with AI from the HR. We tend to say that, okay, from the HR, if the HR is able to be AI fluent, then because we are in charge, or our responsibility is to be able to manage the reskilling of everyone else within the company. It definitely puts us in the position of being the first people to really incorporate the idea of AI, the idea of automations. And from that, we can be able now to easily let the automation really just flow down to other departments. So probably I'd say it comes down from the first people to be first reskilled or upskilled with automation is the HR and HR in every capacity. That is from the talent development, talent attraction, learning and development to the ones that in regards to the employee experience and engagements, the ones dealing with employee inspire. Then it will definitely come down now to the data adjacent roles, the analyst, the coordinators, because that is where as well you can be able to see the real importance of automation, and they will be able to show the bigger percentage of how really the automations and the new systems has affected the organization. Then that comes down now to the middle managers and as well down to the frontline roles.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. HR professionals need to also be very AI fluent. There's no excuse for that. Okay, so I actually have one last question, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds each to respond. I know I'm like super strict. So my question, last question of the day is, what advice would you give HR leaders who want to start embedding cross-functional alignment into their planning cycle? So why don't we start with Amy, Nicole, and then Abigail?
Oh, that's a great question. I would, from my perspective, it's very much tying the work plan back to their business plan, and then having a full view, being able to look at what you're driving, where you're driving it, and when, right across the business, and the metrics for both those two pieces so that you're driving behavior. But ultimately, there's no bad place to start. It's just start.
Yep. That's great advice. Thank you. Nicole.
Yeah, so I totally agree with Amy. I would focus on a kind of very short cross-functional kind of capability review, right? So like what are we focusing on? What is the kind of the pain points? What are the pain points? Map those critical initiatives. Identify those exact skills and role accountabilities that are actually missing. And now we're actually moving into kind of the reskilling and upscaling and what competencies do we actually have in-house. And then also convert that into, when are you actually doing that? It's a 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and just try it out. Keep trialing and use little pilots to move forward. And that's what I keep coming to. Just please move forward. Don't keep it too basic. Don't step back now. I heard a lot about talent strategies and people kind of going back to basics. Please don't. Just keep moving.
Thank you so much. And Abigail, you have 30 seconds because we are out of time.
I really do. Yes, I for real do agree with Amy and Nicole as well. It's just mainly finding the loophole, understanding the exact gap, understanding the problem, and being able to align our solutions with the problem, so that we can be able to avoid misalignment with on the expectations of success at the end of it all.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. I took a lot of notes. So I would like to thank you for your time and for sharing your knowledge and your experience with us. It was a great panel. Thank you also to Jessa, who's behind the scenes making it all happen. So thank you so much, Jessa, for that. And I would like to remind everybody that's listening to us that we do have the AI Experience Summit coming up December 2nd to December 5th. So you can check out Hacking HR's LinkedIn page or go to hackinghr.io and learn all about it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day or night, and I will see you around. Bye.